Like, if I join the meeting, are we gonna be able to share?
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll give you sharing capability. Aaron, if you can give Steve, I don't know if I can as co-host, if you can give him
Co-host?
Jared. I'm co-host, so just you have to give him sharing capability. Once he's in, let him know.
Yeah, I can make him a co-host.
Okay. Okay, set. Good evening, everyone. We'll call the February 1st Town of Rochester Town Board regular meeting to order. Would you stand for the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ask the town clerk to do the roll call, please.
Councilman Coleman.
Here.
Councilwoman Dindal.
Here.
Councilwoman Allen.
Here.
Councilman Sweetson. Here. Supervisor Bates.
Here. The first agenda item is acceptance of the agenda. There are three additions or two additions and one change. The town board accepts the agenda as prepared by the town supervisor. I'm going to ask that we move the phone discussion, phone system upgrade discussion to after privilege of the floor. Kathy Gordon from CrossPoint, who is our phone system provider vendor, is going to be able to attend. And initially she didn't think she would, so she is able to attend and is able to talk us through the issues and the concerns. So I'm going to move her to before the financial report. And then we're going to add two discussion items. One is on a request for a temporary clerk in the CEO's office. And one is a discussion on town board tablets, which were ordered, but I asked the vendor to hold off on the order because I just wanted to talk with the board with the specs and make sure it's what's going to work for you guys before we complete the order. So those two items will be added. With that, please introduce Dennis Doyle. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Do I have a motion for that?
Make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Thank you. With that, now I introduce Dennis Doyle, as Ulster County Planning Director, and Steve Peterson. And Steve, your title is
Deputy Director.
okay. If you gentlemen want to come up and join us, the camera is behind your head. Apologies.
Look that anyway.
I'm going to turn the floor over to you, but as a way of a little bit of background, Dennis reached out to me early fall, maybe end of summer, and talked about possibility of siting an emergency communications tower on town property. And I'm going to let the two gentlemen talk from there.
So you do have a hopefully a very brief presentation, and I'm going to sort of share the floor with Steve in terms of how we got here, so to speak. The county has moved from. Can you get that presentation up? I think, yeah.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the Zoom, you can just hit share screen and.
So while he's getting that up, I just want to say that what we're trying to do as a county is to recognize that we have some significant gaps in our public safety radio system from dispatch purposes and from people in the field, and there's coverage issues associated with that. And we've been moving away from our current analog system, our current system, to what they call a simulcast system. And the simulcast system, literally, it's designed to essentially that every tower talks to other towers. So when a page goes out or a notes goes out, it's broadcast from all the towers itself and every tower. And what that means is that not only do we need additional towers relative to the needed coverage. And if anybody knows, in certain areas of the county, you can't get cell phones. Well, in certain areas of the county, not only can't you get cell phones, but the first responders cannot get radio signals as well. This is particularly important for fire and EMS and police, particularly as what they call the personal radio systems that are on there, that they wear on the uniform, not the mobile systems. So when we looked at the county, we started to look at the areas where we need to either strengthen backbone communication.
I'm sorry, you need help, Steve?
Yeah, it's on the. I'm not able to access. So that's how we're playing here.
Yeah.
It's on.
So now go to the Zoom. Open that up.
In share.
No, open up, oh yeah, there, down on the bottom. Click on whichever one you want to share.
Yeah, see, it's not there.
Oh,
It's not showing.
oh, because it's on a thumb drive and not on your.
Just copy and paste it. You do that too?
Is the presentation open or
It
you're
is,
just looking?
yeah, it's on the board.
Do you want to give me your thumb drive? I'll just put it in my computer and I can put it up.
So,
Sorry.
well, and please help me here, Steve. So what we've done is we've looked at all of the areas of the county where we need to add additional tower and radio infrastructure in order for the system to work properly and also in order to cover these critical coverage gaps. To date, we are looking at and have completed a tower in the town of Saugerties, where about 50% of the northern portion of the town was literally blank when it came to personal radio equipment on first responders. We're also in the process of designing and probably going out to bid shortly a tower on Tonchi Mountain, which is in the town of Olive. We originally started that work with the thought that we could actually add on to the existing tower. As we looked at that existing tower, we found that we couldn't. We now are building we're hoping to build a 135-foot tower on Tonchi Mountain. And we were also looking at towers in Shandaken areas, in Phoenicia areas. And as we go down the Route 209 corridor, the areas that come out are the Accord area in this area, and also in the Wawarsing area. And then finally, I shouldn't say finally, but the other tower that is a priority for us is in the Rosendale area. We've met with the Rosendale Town Board with respect to that tower as well. These towers are literally public safety radio towers with, when appropriate, providing the necessary structural loading on the tower so that we can allow cell carriers on that tower. We have had, typically we're allowing up to 2 cell carriers on the tower. We have had interest from multiple cell carriers for the towers that we currently have and for these new towers. There are some issues with respect to that, but generally these things work. Some communities don't want cell towers on our towers, so they don't allow them. And some instances we have, and particularly in this instance, we know we have a non-compete clause with respect to your existing tower on that. So we know that we're going to be limited with respect to our ability to attract a cell company, nor do we need to with respect to this tower. Where are we now? Why don't we start going back through the slides and you can get a sense of where we're at. So if you want to do the next slide, thanks, Michael. Does it go down or? Oh, wow.
Is that it? Is that the right
I
one?
think you missed one, but that's okay.
Did I? No, I'll go back.
That's fine.
That's the first one. That's second.
Okay,
Yep.
and I know I cut a lot out of this one. So the approval process, generally what we try to do is first thing we do is we establish need. And the way that we establish need is we actually look at coverages for the tower, for the particular area, and that we work with Motorola. And we also work with a company that deals with Aviat, this is a company that deals with the point-to-point microwave connections. And the reason we use microwave with fiber backup is that microwave is 99.9% reliable, whereas fiber If poles go down, you don't have the connection. So we have both relative to that. We run through under the environmental work is typically what we would see for a regular tower that you're building for a cell company, where you have the issues associated with visibility, you have the issues with respect to historic work, all of the other kind of work. The county goes through that. We generally establish ourselves as lead agency as the county is constructing the facility. And then we go through a decision-making process with the community. The decision-making process is a little bit different in a community, mainly because of the fact that a county enjoys a partial immunity from local zoning under something called the balancing of public interest test. It's a fairly old case, but it's been tested quite a ways, and we work with the community to make sure that when we look at the tower facilities, that we balance the public interest. So we're not generally in front of planning boards or zoning boards looking for approvals. We're usually in front of town boards looking for these approvals, and it comes through the town board. And you're not making a determination with respect to the State Environmental Quality Review Act. You're making a determination whether or not the county is meant to balance a public interest test. We'll go through some of that for you. It is a fairly big file, I know that.
I'm hitting the arrow. Spacebar? No?
Very complicated document.
Yeah, we
The whole process.
the technology actually works better for the towers than it does on the power company. So everybody-
Okay, here we go.
So this will give you the sense in terms of the project need. We've been working with Motorola since probably 5 years ago or longer.
Yeah, longer.
In terms of making sure that we were going to have adequate coverage. There's something called the 95% confidence level with respect to coverage. These are actually in the contract that the county has between the county and Motorola, that they actually field test, make sure that the communication here that we're proposing, it will meet a 95% confidence level that you can get it. And you're talking about both inbound and outbound. That means the tower's talking to the person in the field, and the person in the field is talking back to the tower. So that's what we're looking at that. And these are road tested with respect to that. And we do it both for what they call mobile, which means in car, or personal, which means on person. And it's really critical. I can't tell you that some of the discussions that we've had with the emergency services personnel, how much they really depend upon the communications back and forth between themselves and between the county's dispatch areas relative to making sure that they're out of harm's way and making sure that they can call in additional services if they need them, and making sure that they have the right equipment on site for a particular emergency. I think we're set with that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So, for example, I have a scanner that one of the local EMS squads lent to me. I can hear the county dispatch, but I don't hear any communications because I live in Ravine, essentially. Would this improve that potentially, where I would be able to hear the communications?
When you say you don't hear the communication.
I don't hear, like, the
from the
acknowledgement.
county or from,
I don't hear acknowledgement from if they're deploying from Cape
yeah,
Anson
the
or something.
responders. So you may not have that, do you have the right frequency in there
I think so.
for
They,
radio?
they set it up for me. So.
Okay, all right, so it's probably in there, but yes, this system will do that. It would be simulcast. So it's gonna communicate off of all the tower sites at the same time. So if you're in a poor coverage area, this tower will certainly help that, or worse, you can help that.
And I apologize for not doing introduction. Michael is our liaison for fire and EMS. So EMS agency wanted to hear what they do. So
So the site that we've looked at is a site that is owned by the town. It currently has an existing tower on it. I think it's American Towers or Homeland Tower.
it was Homeland. It's
now
now
American Tower. And it's adjacent to your existing solar field out there. Where are we now? We are in feasibility study phase. We're not proposing to build this. We're proposing to take another hard look at it. We want to make sure that you're aware of it as soon as possible, that we are looking here. So the tower, we're currently looking at coverage somewhere between 160 and 180 feet. looking at that. And if you go to the next one, we'll give you a typical, this is the location where you see the existing tower is behind this tower. As you walk the road, you can see a proposed compound area. And typically these compound areas are almost similar, perhaps a little bit bigger, but almost similar to the cell towers compound areas. Cell towers have gotten smaller and smaller over time. This is essentially uses a diesel generator, a propane generator for backup. We will run into that site fiber for backup, as well as the microwave link to the next tower in the array. Next slide. So that's a typical layout where you have, this is a cell, you currently have an existing monopole at the site that is listed in our records at 150 feet. So this will be a little bit taller than the existing tower. That said, it's also down elevation from the existing tower. So the elevations may work out that it's similar, very similar with respect to where the elevation. We can build a monopole. Typically what we do build is a self-supporting, it's otherwise known as a three-leg structure. We are building up in Shandaken, up in Tonchi, we're actually building a guide structure. It has to do with the ability to get construction equipment up through there to do that. These things generally go up in very short period of time. Somewhere the construction for these is somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 months, and that's a long time. It can be, and generally a lot of that time frame is not with respect to the tower itself. It's really the equipment that needs to go on the tower and the adjoining equipment, which is the shelter facility and the generator and the propane tank. Those take a substantial amount of lead time to get those in. Next slide. So what do we do from an environmental standpoint? Well, the county will pass a resolution trying to establish itself as lead agency. The town has an opportunity to respond to that lead agency request. You can agree, you can disagree. But once that's established, we'll go through a standard discussion that you see for most cell towers with a view shed analysis, necessary photo simulations, work on the historic and archaeological report, design work, site plan, geotechnical analysis, and then we'll take a look at what we're putting on the tower. And what we put on the tower depends on how the tower is designed and what the structural loading of the tower is. And you see the current status is at a feasibility level. So we've done some very preliminary work on this. We know that one of the things we want to make sure of is the site's buildable, because clearly this site is buildable. We also want to make sure that we're not going to run into any significant environmental concerns right off the bat. What could they be? They could be brownfields. They could be adjacency of historic structures. They could be archaeological work here. We're fairly confident, given the fact that we're literally within stone's throw of an existing tower, that we're not going to run into those types of issues here. So we'll go through the geotechnical analysis, et cetera, but we'll have an opportunity relative to our work to talk about where we do the photo simulations from. Next slide, Mike. So we have by GIS, there's a program, Geographic Information Systems. You can sort of lay in a tower and say, well, where is it visible and where is it not visible? These are extremely rough areas in terms of where your visibility is. And they're used essentially to say, well, typically what happens here is you use these to say, well, where should we be looking for photo simulations? So you look at the visible portions of where the tower would be, and you look and say, well, in those areas, what sensitive sites in those areas are used for photo simulations? The good news here is we can use some of the work that was done by the American Tower folks and to buttress some of the work that we would do separately and apart from that's, I think, that may be a 2 mile radius. I think it makes like a 2 mile radius, and I'm sorry for not labeling that.
Yeah, that's what I would estimate.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the pink,
And the pink would be non-visible.
Okay.
Yeah. No, sorry, I cut off the legend to get it on the slide, but the pink is non-visible. So the good news is that from where we are, the cumulative impacts are not significant relative to the existing tower. And most of this area is highway business or low density residential.
Dennis, one point,
It's AR3 zone area.
it is, yeah. One point to bring up, it's not in that 2-mile radius, but Shanga Mountain Scenic Byway, Route 4455 overlook into the valley. Even if it's not in the 2-mile radius, you may want to look at it from there, just that's a state scenic byway designation.
Yeah,
You
typically,
can see the existing tower, but it's work to see it.
yeah, typically what we end up doing is we usually if there's an historic commission, we would ask the historic commission if they see any sensitive sites that they're concerned about. We go back to the historic database, make sure that if there's something on the National Register, that's there, and then you start looking at where people gather, town parks or one of those types of things, and you do that kind of work, and then finally review from adjoining roadway systems. And we follow if you ever looked at visible analysis, there's DEC guidelines for visibility analysis. We follow those guidelines in terms of doing our visibility analysis. Next slide, Mike. So this is an area we've done, and we did a tower in Saugerties. This will give you a sense of, looking at the rings in terms of visibility by mile points. We went out 5 miles here, and then we focused on the areas that the community gave us. We focused on the areas that we were looking at relative to the historic stuff that I told before, and then significant view sheds that where you're looking at having one of the things when you look at visibility analysis and view sheds, it's not only can you see it, it's how long do you see it for. So if it's a passing view that you're looking to turn your head and you're past it, that's a different view than if it's at an intersection or it's at an area where you see the tower coming up. And there's a lot of data, a lot of material that shows you how and why you do these kinds of visibility analysis. Next slide, Mike. I think so this is an area, this is looking from Route 32, actually in Saugerties. It's looking into a quarry that the county owned. And this is a roadway system as you move into the quarry, not very well known, but there are some concerns from the neighbors when we did this site. So they asked us to do a photo simulation. So give you a sense of what the photo simulations look like. So I can't see, are the balloons there, Michael?
Yeah.
All right, so, yeah, thank you. So we did float balloons, and we actually did a 2 balloon float out there. We did 2 locations, and we thought we picked the best one. But we did a photo simulation from our original site, and then listening to the community, we actually moved the site. So when you float balloons on the basis of you put 2 up, and they're generally 10 feet apart, and that gives you a sense of scale when you do your photo simulations. So you know what the top of the tower is, and you know from the distance between the balloons from a scale perspective when you start laying the tower in. We also did something in Saugerties that was not well received, but we thought it gave ourselves a significant heads up in terms of where visibility would occur. We actually took a drone and flew the drone at the tower site to the location, the elevation of the tower, and then took pictures in terms of what structures and what areas we could see and what we couldn't see. That concept was lost on some of the individuals of the public, and I can appreciate that, but from our perspective, even if it was lost on them, it wasn't lost on us. So we were able to go back and say,
I can see you, you can see me.
that you would think that that's a simple concept, but maybe it's
People
not.
don't want to be.
So that's what it allowed us to go back to, particularly with respect to some of the very sensitive historic sites, to be able to say, we don't think we can see it, but now we know if we're going to do a picture, what we can expect to see or not see. And generally, a lot of our effort was confirmed. I'll leave it at that. So next slide, Mike. This gives you the tower as a photo simulation based on that balloon float. We concluded the county concluded, and the tower is actually constructed, we concluded that there wasn't a significant visual impact associated with this. It was a passing shot. If you're on this road, you actually go by the site fairly quickly.
Do you know what the distance from this photo is to the tower?
I do, and I think it's
It was,
somewhere in the neighborhood.
1,900 feet.
1,900 feet.
It's at the bottom of
Yeah,
on the left at the bottom of it.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So we do, and we tried to make sure that is the case as well. And the tower is not lighted. That's a 165-foot tower. So it's similar to what you would see at the site, assuming we move ahead.
And our towers, existing towers, didn't require lighting by the FAA either.
Yeah.
They're not in the flight path of any.
Yeah.
We originally thought maybe Ellenville, but they were clear enough.
The next slide. So we do have both SECR and NEPA here. So this just gives you a sense of what that means. We have to go to the FCC and FAA and submit that necessary package to them, and they'll come back and tell us whether or not there are any issues at the federal level. We do also have SHPO work that we have to do. We have not so far run into a situation where SHPO has had a significant concern with respect to the tower site, both from an archaeological standpoint and from a view shed standpoint. Next slide, Mike. Here's the next slide.
Yep.
So I wanted to show that this is the balance of public interest test. Be happy to show you the case law with respect to this, but there's eight. Nine, yeah. There's nine things that essentially a community is asked to consider. There's not a lot of case law relative to this, but what we end up doing here is we'll go through and we'll address each of the areas for the community to consider, and then the question then becomes is the appropriate board makes the decision. You can make it collectively, you can make it selectively. We have done this for a cemetery and a veteran cemetery in New Paltz, where in New Paltz it was the town planning board at the town level. We were fortunate enough to find a site that actually the town and village boundaries are right through the middle of it, which is always fun. But the town board the planning board made a decision, and both the village planning board made the decision. In the community we're working in Olive, the town board is making the decision. And in the town of Saugerties, they assigned it to the zoning board of appeals. So the zoning board of appeals made the decision. These are not formal applications where you go through. This is a balanced public interest test. The interesting thing about the public interest test, balanced public interest test, is some attorneys will opine, and we have used this, that in making that test, you're not making a determination under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. All you're doing is making a determination that the county has met its balancing test, that the benefit to the public outweighs any of the issues associated with it at the local level. Generally, what we do is we actually coordinate with a local planning board. We submit all the documentation to the local planning board, so they have, but we're not subject to site plan review or a public hearing or anything else of that nature, although the agency that makes the determination under the balance of public interest test should conduct a public hearing. But you're conducting a public hearing not on the applications. Typically, that you're looking at the applications as it does for a cell tower, you're conducting a public hearing on the tests in the balance of public interest test. The county will then depending upon that effort, the county would issue its own determination under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. We go through a process of issuing a building permit. For this, the county issues its own building permits. It's not subject to the building permit requirements at the town level. We would have a demolition plan, et cetera, associated with that, similar to what you see for other towers. And then the negotiations have to do with the fact that you're on your property and we need your approval for the property use. at this particular site. All kinds of ways to accomplish that. One of the things that we do have some concern about is lease versus easement. Depending upon how this is funded, the county needs a property interest in order to bond the project. Our bond counsel basically says we need to own something besides a lease in order to fund the project. So typically you can see this in two ways. One is that the county is not funded and it's used, we use federal dollars. We can only sign 5-year leases on the county. That's a restriction under county law. But typically what we can do is it's a grant of easement with an annual payment. So you think of it, it looks just like a lease, except that there's an easement. And that allows us to bond. That's a discussion for another time, but clearly if we decide to move forward, we want to know that there's some support for the town that recognizes the constraints we have under county law.
Next one.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. And for the board's information, so the two existing cell towers that are on town property that are private cell towers, they were done with a bit of a hybrid. It's called the Monroe balancing test. I think it was the county of Monroe or the.
County, yes.
Yeah, so that's why it's often known as that. What they did is the town board took perspective of those 9 points on the majority of them. There were a couple that they deferred to the planning board to decide, and the planning board did go through a site plan review process. It was very complicated. At the end of the day, came out with the end result being that the town moved forward with it. But because it wasn't a town project, it was a private vendor project, it was done that way. This would be somewhat different in that it is another government agency. It's not a for-profit company coming in for us. So let me see if any of you have any questions, see if Mary Lou has any questions, and you may need a lot of time to think about this. This discussion started and Dennis came to me about a week ago and said, we're up to the point now I need to come talk to the whole board. So.
Well, I have a couple of questions. So I guess first question, if cell towers are also put on this, I know that you guys have to deal with the contracts of our existing cell towers, but where would the revenue from those cell towers go, to the county or to us as the property owners that are leasing
So,
or easementing?
what I would say to you, given what we know that's in the existing lease that you have with the Homeland Security folks, I would suspect that we would not see any cell facilities on this tower because of that non-compete clause that's there. That's what I would expect. The conversation relative to if we do is a conversation of revenue sharing. Clearly, these towers cost the county anywhere between $600,000 to $1 million to put them up. But I'm not envisioning in this instance that there would be cell carriers there. It doesn't cost us a lot of money to design the tower so that we can put them on in the future. But for us, the revenue sharing is easy for us.
Yeah, so you haven't had another township where you put them in that's done a cell tower on it as of yet? Okay.
Yeah, but I will say this, the conversations that we're having would be a similar conversation with Rosendale because they own the facility. The conversation we're having with respect to Tonchi is the fact that we have a private landowner and they want some revenue.
Yes.
Yeah, but yes, the short answer is that those are hopefully a lot easier conversations.
It's a percentage.
Yeah, we're certainly open to that, but as we sit here today, I have a feeling that the non-compete clause discussion with Homeland Towers is going to be the
American Tower.
American Towers. It's going to be one of those. Yeah, we're kind of okay with you, but we're going to make sure you're not going to be able to put it, or they're going to want a piece of the.
That's what I'm wondering, if they wanted to add to, potentially add to your cap, like be the cell cap, like if that's what happens, just so you know, if there was some
If
type
they want
of land.
that.
No, if they wanted to add another, like rent the tower, right? Also, like, that's why I just wanted to make sure, 'cause even though there's a non-compete, they can they're not competing with themselves, they wanted to put. a tower
One of the things I,
It's an interesting concept.
one of the things I think that we all recognize, particularly when you talk to the emergency responder community, is cell service is just as important as radio service. And that's why when we started this, we really wanted to make sure that we were able to deal with cell carriers. I can tell you that, and two of the cell carriers actually have a emergency service function. One of them is
AT&T, FirstNet, and then Verizon. Both, when you see, fire service, law enforcement, where they have mobile computers in the car, they're transmitting on the wireless network, right? So AT&T FirstNet is a first responder based, band 14 communications network system just for public safety. And Verizon has a version of that as well. So those would be.
So we're completely open and indeed encouraging cell communications, and have been in discussion with both of those providers on other towers that we have been proposed. And also the reverse of that is on towers they're proposing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You wouldn't happen to have a contact for American Tower?
Possibly. I have a sales contact, but I'll get you that name that I have. Because last year, or maybe it was last year, we renegotiated our lease.
Okay.
But they hired a company to do that negotiation. But yeah,
They're
Mary,
Aren't they registered at the building department? They should have contact information.
that's probably true.
Thanks, Mary Lou.
Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
I'm sure we can find a contact. So.
So I guess I'm curious, this is just for my own, out of my own curiosity, I have no like thoughts about it, but in the picture, it looked like the tower itself is very close to the solar arrays. Was there like a reason?
Placement and space available. We didn't want to be too close to American Tower. But yet we had to be off of the roadway to have them, everybody have access.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit closer on the wooded side, the north side of the access. There's not enough space before your property.
Okay.
So
We may have to check if it's in the lease
Well, that's
area with the solar company as well, because we have a footprint of a lease area with them as well, so.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
So we
we're
may
not,
have to check if it's in the area. Lease.
Yeah.
And when doing your environmental review with the other tower there and with the solar arrays there, I think that should be included, within your review in some way.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. One of the things, when we built the tower in Saugerties, the county was actually proposing a solar facility associated with that site as well, before we got the interconnection costs. But we had a long conversations with the solar providers in terms of whether or not tower, particularly ice buildup and those kinds of things, posed a risk to the array. And the answers we got, they were singularly unconcerned, which surprised me. But yes, I can understand that.
Yeah, we want to make sure, it's all really on basically one parcel of land. We want to make sure that we're careful there. And I have one other question. Are you also working on a decommissioning plan?
Yes, we would have a decommissioning plan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
and then, so my other question on location, I don't know that you covered this, but I might have missed it, that, was there, I am very supportive of this idea of complete coverage of, communication, so I want to say that, but is there a reason why you picked this particular location over other locations? Is it just that we have the other facilities here, or was there a locational importance with respect to the other towers that you're building?
We looked at several locations, and we have working with Motorola, who did the coverage maps for us with the entire system. The 209 corridor from basically Main Street all the way down through the south side of Cohasset, down by the Troopers Barracks, is a zone that showed up as a gap every single time we ran coverage maps. So something in this area was needed. So we looked at the state police barracks, and then I noticed that the town property here, and then we ran the maps, and sure enough, it takes care of everything we need. It fills that gap very well.
You know, we did not, we looked at this, quite frankly, because of the fact that there's very little cut and cover you have to do in this particular location. There is land behind here that you do own, but it's heavily wooded. You know, we can go up into the wooded area and cut out of, but we didn't want to do that. So we thought that this was a more appropriate spot, but if we run into lease issues, maybe we need to rethink that.
We can check too, because I will say, Nexamp has been very supportive of other things on that property. So they've actually encouraged good community involvement. So we can certainly check if it's in their footprint and see if there's any issues with, you know, ice zone and things like that.
Yeah, because certainly that wooded area is, like, it's not a huge parcel, but there are some, it is a sensitive,
Yeah, you know,
Area.
if you can stay out of it, you'd want to stay out of it unless it drops off.
it has a, it is like, has a lot of interesting species and the water, and so. I was just curious about some of the decision making, and also, I mean, I think other board members might have questions, but also just hearing about what are next steps for us and for you and timeline, so that I know this is just like the beginning of the.
So I think from my perspective, I would like the board to think about who you'd like, and Mike mentioned the hybrid approach you used in the past, but like the board to think about who you'd want to lead the discussion with respect to the balance of public interest test, whether it should be, I mean, the three boards that make the most sense are the town board, the planning board, and the zoning board of appeals. Your call completely. There's nothing in the statute that I could find in your statute that assigns it in. So it's your call completely. And then from there, as we move through that process, the county will put on board a design firm. We're just in the feasibility now. We would put on board a design firm, sign that contract, and then begin in earnest to essentially work out actual design of what this is, with all the grading work that's done, the environmental work, particularly the photo simulations and stuff like that. And as I said before, one of the key considerations on the balance of public interest test is the ability of local government to affect the outcome. So one of the things we want to make sure that we do is conduct a public hearing and let people have a conversation with us about that. It would be your public hearing we would attend. But then at the end of the day, if there's any specific things that come out that people have some concerns about, we'd have to take a look about the tower and the various things that we have to do in order to build it. I would tell you that in Saugerties, it resulted in a movement of the tower of about 300 or 400 feet. We moved the tower because of a view shed issue associated with one of the neighbors. And then we took a real hard look at the height, and we did additional coverage analysis and additional analysis relative to our microwave paths, and we reduced the tower height by about 10 feet. We were able to reduce the tower height by about.
Any other board member questions?
I'm just curious, from saying go to actually having the tower up and operational, what does that timeline look like? And secondary to that, are you aware of are there any conversations about like this transitioning to like LEO constellations or communication via some other satellite for emergency communications in like the next 5 to 10 years, where this might not be relevant after that point?
I'll take the second one first. No, on other ways of communication or transmitting out to the satellite. And Saugerties, as an example, took us about a year and a half because of some some of the issues that we had with USHED.
So I would think that a lot of the timing depends on the public participation process. And what we find when we do the photo simulations. The fact that there is an existing tower here gives me some comfort that if there was a significant visual impact, that the existing tower wouldn't be there. So now you're just really having a conversation about cumulative rather than a one-off kind of thing. But it would be nice by late fall so we could get something in, but I don't know whether that's the case.
2025? Or,
2024.
oh, 2024.
Yeah.
2024, that we could have bid documents out depending upon local approvals. But that's a very, very aggressive schedule. More
That's to go
likely,
out to bid and then.
yeah, and more likely, well, you have to make an environmental determination. We have to do a lease negotiation, whatever negotiation we have with the community. And get the necessary balance of public interest test through. And we have bid documents that go out and construction. So, sometime I'd like to say early 2025, we'd like to have a tower up.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that any time frame I give you, you can hit 30%. It's like construction costs.
Inspection never goes well.
Okay, well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate the time.
No
And I
problem.
hope, please give us some thought in terms of the board.
We will, we'll speak with our attorney and we'll speak as a board and I just, Aaron will be away, which is why I pushed this to tonight rather than next week, but.
And as we get, just so you know, as we get a firmer discussion with respect to the lease area and the tower company, we would move relatively quickly to put a firm on board to actually do the design work, to actually move it from feasibility.
Steve, would you be able to give me a very specific footprint kind of thing that I can then go back to the solar company and try to overlay and work
Yeah,
with
more
them?
detail.
Yeah, I'll reach out to her.
Yeah,
I can do that.
Because I want to see
Ordinance.
proximity to our lease area with them.
Yeah, for sure.
And with the feasibility, I didn't give you a copy of the feasibility study because it's in draft form, but as soon as that gets finalized, I'll send a copy of the feasibility study, so you have it. But thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks,
Okay, our next and in your packet is a copy of Ted Fink's presentation for community preservation. So, Ted, you'll, and for the board members, Ted Fink is with a company called, is it Green Plan? We're not hearing you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Oh, now we can.
Okay, great. Well, good
Yeah.
evening, Mike. Thank you for inviting me, and it's good to meet the town board. I want to thank you also for letting me pipe in by Zoom tonight. I had hoped to get there, but GI virus nailed me a couple of days ago, and I didn't want to take any chances and expose anybody tonight to that. But Mike invited me to come in and to give you a little background on the community preservation plan process in New York State and how it might be usable for the town of Rochester. So I wanted to give you just a brief presentation of some of the features of the community preservation plan, where it came about, why it might be beneficial to Rochester, and maybe answer any questions that you might have about the process. Before I begin, does anybody have any sort of general questions or anything like that? Are you all familiar with community preservation planning, or is this a brand new issue?
We've talked about it as a board. Emily is relatively new, so Emily might be a little less informed than the rest of the board. We've sort of discussed this already as a generalized topic when we did our budgeting. So,
Okay.
why don't you do a little bit of community preservation 101?
Okay, I'll do a little bit of 101 then. First of all, the whole concept of the community preservation planning process began really years ago. I think one of the first communities that did a community preservation plan was actually the island of Martha's Vineyard, which is 6 separate towns. But there was an island-wide referendum that was held in 1986 when, as you all know, Martha's Vineyard is a popular vacation spot. And what was happening was a lot of the treasured farms and coastal bays and areas that were near and dear to the community there were being gobbled up by subdivisions. And the idea of establishing a real estate transfer tax for real estate sales came up, and it was passed by a very wide margin on the island, and they established the Martha's Vineyard Land Bank Commission. And then around late 1990s, Southampton in Long Island was facing a lot of the same kinds of pressures, a lot of second homes, a lot of subdivision development, a lot of folks that were moving out of New York City, and they were seeing the same problems happening. The farms out there, the coastal resources were being gobbled up by development. And they got special state legislation to allow for the establishment of real estate transfer tax after a local referendum. And Governor Pataki signed that bill into law, and they were the first community in New York State to establish a real estate transfer tax on real estate transactions to use the funds from and the revenues from the transfer tax to buy lands and to buy conservation easements on lands. Shortly after that, in around 2004, the town of Warwick in Orange County, where I was the town planner for 31 years there, and we prepared a new comprehensive plan in the late 1990s and got wind of what was going on in Southampton. I was familiar with Martha's Vineyard Land Bank already because of going on vacation there for many, many years. And so the whole notion gained some traction in the town. It became part of the comprehensive plan. The town supervisors sought special state legislation for Warwick to be able to do that. And the populace in the town, they voted overwhelmingly for it. Same thing happened a couple years later in the town of Red Hook in Dutchess County, and went through the same process. I've been Red Hook's planner for 20 years now. So in 2006, they also sought state legislation because both in Warwick and Red Hook, they saw an erosion principally of their agricultural lands. Warwick has the Black Dirt area and had a very strong farming community. Red Hook was the breadbasket of Dutchess County, and same thing was happening in both towns. The farms were being gobbled up by speculative developers and subdivided. And the community saw an opportunity that presented itself in the Southampton case, and they were both able to get special state legislation. Owing to the success of those three communities, the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Act was passed in 2007, but it only applied to municipalities in Westchester and Putnam counties. And there was not a whole lot that happened in either of those counties. But Jen Metzger, I believe she was your state senator around 2016, 2017. She pushed for an amendment to the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Act that would include Ulster County. And so the first community that took advantage of that was the town of New Paltz. I prepared the community preservation plan for that one too, in addition to the Warwick and the Red Hook plans. And New Paltz was followed by Marbletown and Gardner. And one town in Putnam County also prepared a community preservation plan. A couple of others have happened in other communities around the state. Kingston, you may have heard something about them. They prepared one last year. So there's a lot of activity that's been happening around Rochester, especially with three of the communities that are part of the Gunks area. as Rochester is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen, and I think you've given me that ability.
Yeah, you should have it then.
Yep. Okay, great. All right. So can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I do have familiarity with the town of Rochester. This was my backyard on the Peterskill. There's a little house along Towpath Road. It's an A-frame, and I lived there from 1980 until around 1985. And so I'm quite familiar with Rochester, and actually I spend a lot of time up at Mohonk and Minnewaska. I go mountain biking up there, and so I know and I love the Gunks, and you know, the town of Rochester is near and dear to my heart. I had to move away, unfortunately, because of job responsibilities, and I now live in Dutchess County. But in any case, I know Rochester pretty well from having lived there for 5 years. So what I wanted to present to you tonight is why a community preservation plan. What are some of the provisions of the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Act that you need to be aware of, what you have to do and include in a community preservation plan, and then pretty much open it up to questions. But I don't want to make this a long presentation. I want to keep it brief tonight. And so I sent a copy of the slides that I'm presenting right now to Mike so that he can give them to you, and they've got more
have that in
details.
front of them. They
Great.
have that in front of them tonight, so.
Okay, terrific. So there's going to be more there that I'm going to be talking about tonight, and I'm happy to follow up with any answers to any questions you might have after the meeting tonight as you read through the materials and everything else. But in any case, first, why a community preservation plan? And let me just say this, if anyone has a question that comes to mind as I go through this, feel free to just raise your hand or whatever. I don't know that I'm going to be able to see you because, oh, there we go. Now you're bigger. Just raise your hand and I'll answer those questions. But basically, what does a community preservation plan do? It provides the basis for creation of a community preservation fund. That is a dedicated fund where the revenues that are collected through a real estate transfer tax of up to 2% reside. And those monies can be used to purchase lands as well as interest in lands consisting of trail easements, conservation easements, scenic easements, and that sort of thing. And what they do is they provide permanent protection for, and what you're going to see on this slide and in the papers that you have in front of you are quotes that are taken directly from the Town of Rochester Comprehensive Plan. So it provides permanent protection for environmental resources needed to live in a community. And that's taken right from the first goal in your comprehensive plan. And it allows Rochester to strike a balance with development that's prescribed by zoning. So zoning basically provides the provisions for people to be able to develop their lands in accordance with the rules that are established in the town zoning law. And in order to have some sort of a balance with development and community preservation, there needs to be some way to be able to find a viable means to protect those lands that make up the community character of the town of Rochester. And your comprehensive plan is full of information on exactly what that character is. And your open space index that was done not too long ago also has, I've seen priorities that were that appeared in there, you know, things like water resources, productive farmland, and so forth. And your comprehensive plan also has policies to preserve productive farmland and other open space. And one of the interesting things about your comprehensive plan is not only does it establish a policy to preserve productive farmland and other open space, but it also has a policy to support creation of local purchase of development rights program. And that's number 7 on this list. And essentially that's the way that a community preservation fund functions is to allow for the purchase of lands and the purchase of development rights on lands. And essentially what that means is that the landowners retain ownership of the property, but there are conservation easements that are imposed on the property that would protect that land from being developed by uses that are permitted under the zoning. So basically the overall why a community preservation plan, it's to conserve the town's resources for present and future generations. It's taking a long look at the future of the town of Rochester and protecting those resources that make the town unique and make the town what it is today. And that includes a number of things. It can include town's historically significant buildings and sites. And you have a strong policy on that to preserve and to protect them as well. Preserving the character, including small settlements like Allardville and Kaiserite. So those are some of the reasons anyway. There's lots of other reasons and there's lots of good information.
Quick question: that can the land then be used for items like housing or things like that?
Well, once a property has been imposed with a conservation easement, there is generally each easement document is going to be a unique document. That is, it may reserve some use of the land for certain purposes, but generally the purpose of a community preservation plan is not to accommodate things like affordable housing and so forth.
Okay.
In fact, it's a really good question though, Mike, because we had a very similar sort of situation that occurred in Red Hook recently, where the town had been wanting to buy the development rights and to protect a farm, the Cookingham Farm it was called, which was right on the border. Part of it was in the village of Red Hook, part of it was in the town of Red Hook. And as part of the town's effort to protect the important agricultural lands and the prime farmland soils and so forth on this farm, there was also a need in the community for affordable housing. And I think this is something that has been an issue in communities throughout the Hudson Valley as it is nationwide. And so Red Hook wanted to pursue development of a affordable housing on that property. And they were not able to use the monies in the Community Preservation Fund for anything having to do with the affordable housing, but they were able to use those funds for protection of the remainder of the farmland. And Red Hook does have an additional tool in its toolbox, which is called incentive zoning, where the town provides community benefits in exchange for funding from developers that want to gain an increase in density. That actually happened in Red Hook, where there was a builder, Kirchhoff Construction, that came in. They were only allowed, a handful of single-family houses, but they were able to get additional density because the property was on the border with the village of Red Hook and had access to infrastructure in the village. And so they paid into a fund, an open space incentive zoning fund, and that was the fund that was used to purchase the property for affordable housing use. So the quick answer is no, there's nothing in the Community Preservation Act that would allow for affordable housing or anything like that to be part of it. And it's fairly restrictive in what you can use it for. And you'll see that on, I believe, on slide number 7. This is the 14 elements that have to be a part of a community preservation plan. So essentially, one of the features of this is that it's a sustainable source of funding, because as long as there's real estate transactions happening in the community, there's going to be a transfer tax that's going to be collected, and those funds have to be put into a dedicated fund that can only be used for the purposes that are outlined in the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Act. The real estate transfer tax can be up to 2%. And in fact, that was the same percentage that was established in Martha's Vineyard in the 1980s. It was the percentage that was established in Southampton, Warwick and Red Hook both went with a lesser percentage. I believe Gardner, New Paltz, and Marbletown all went with less than 2%. And one of the features of the act is that the home buyers are responsible for the tax, not the home sellers. And it's important to note also that this does not have an effect on property taxes, so it does not affect the general taxation in the community. It only applies to that transfer on real estate. Another feature of the, yeah.
Can the trigger be adjusted instead of doing the median? Could you do like 5% above the median is where the tax kicks in? Or does it have to be at the median is what's exempted?
That's a good question. You know, I don't have an answer to that. That's the first time that question has come up because it does say it must be the median. I don't know if you could exceed that. That's something I'll have to get back to you on.
Okay.
Because I haven't encountered that question before, but let me just make a note and see if I can get an answer to that. So let's see, what else? So there is a voter referendum that's required on this thing. There's 3 local laws that are required. There's one that adopts the community preservation plan. And the plan itself identifies and prioritizes all of the potential projects and parcels that could potentially be acquired in the town. There's another law that creates the Community Preservation Fund and appoints a advisory board to the town board. Community Preservation Advisory Board has to be composed of residents of the town with interest and background in land preservation. And then there's a third local law that actually creates the transfer tax subject to the voter referendum. And so once this is established, this does not lead to eminent domain or anything like that. It's a voluntary program. It only involves willing buyers and willing sellers. And it's something that is typically done in close cooperation with local land trusts because they are generally going to be responsible for holding the conservation easements unless the town elects to do that. But the conservation organizations and land trusts are pretty well situated to be able to do that themselves. And there's a long list of things, you know, it's funds can acquire lands and easements for trails, for recreation areas, paths, preserves, farmland, water resources, historic resources, and so forth. So these are all the types of things that are addressed in the Community Preservation Plan. And I've provided some of the details here on some of the other slides, but I didn't think you wanted to get too much into the weeds tonight, so I'm just going to leave it at that and see if you have any questions and take it from there.
And Ted, it's only for the real estate transaction. So if you were to get an easement for a trail, none of the funds, I assume, can be used for like the actual trail construction or maintenance or any of that.
No, actually 10% can be used for stewardship. And that includes maintenance. So I don't believe that construction is part of that 10%, but it does allow for the management and stewardship of the lands that are so protected. And it's important to note too that there's no implied allowance for any kind of public use of any of the lands that are protected that way, unless the easement documents or unless the properties that are so purchased have been designated for those kinds of uses. So this is simply a voluntary process for private landowners that want to see their lands protected through conservation easements and so forth, to be able to work cooperatively with the community to protect those things that are most valued by residents of the town.
And so when you say 10%, does that mean when the tax is collected, would you have to separate out 10% to have it in a maintenance fund, or?
That's typically how it works, yes. There would be, so for each parcel of land that is protected, 10% of the cost of purchasing that land could then be used for long-term maintenance.
Ted, you've set these up for other communities. I'm wondering what do you know in terms of like the impact that this has had in communities? How long does it take for the funds, how long has it been taking for there to be enough funds for projects to get supported? Have you had any experience with follow-up with communities that have done this?
Well, I'm not familiar with what's happened in Southampton. I can tell you in Warwick that they've protected, I believe, in excess of 5,000 acres of the town using funds from this. Town of Red Hook has protected, maybe it's around 4,000 acres. And that is since 2004 in Warwick and 2006. No, I'm sorry. Let me back up. In Warwick, theirs became fully operational and they began to collect the tax, I believe in 2006 or 2007. Red Hook did not begin to collect the tax until 2012. Even though they got the approval beforehand. They didn't have everything set up until then. And so that's just been in 10 years and they've protected thousands of acres. And what they've done is they've been able to allow the farmers to keep their farms and continue farming. And the farms have been enormously successful in Red Hook. People go there now for farm events. Same thing that happens in Warwick. They have Applefest every year. And those were endangered at one time. They get about 50,000 people in Warwick for Applefest every year. And the only reason why it's still functioning is because those orchards have all been protected through purchase of conservation easements on them. And the farmers are still gaining income from it. And they were compensated for the sale of their development rights.
I know Marbletown is acquiring their first property. I don't know that they've completed it yet, but in just 1 year of taxes. So it's possible to turn it around pretty quickly. Any other questions, Charlotte, Emily? Yeah.
Good right now.
Ted, thank you. I know it's a lot for everybody to digest, and I appreciate all the information. And I'm sure we'll come back to you with some more questions, and I'll get feedback from the board on what they want to. Because just for the board's perspective, if we are going to do this, we would have to have the referendum vote set up by the first week of August in order to be on the November ballot. That's the Board of Elections timeframe. So there is grant funding available to pay for the funds for this study. That application is due in May. So I'm probably going to come back to you next week at the town board meeting to talk about this some more. But I just wanted to get it introduced.
Well, just since I won't be there, I support. I think we should move forward.
Yeah.
That's my own.
And probably what I'll do, Ted, is get questions from the board members and just maybe email them all to you in one document, and then you can answer any questions. So if anybody has questions, send them.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah. Mary Lou.
I don't think that I got this presentation.
No, I just got it this afternoon. I'll forward it to you. I
Thank you
printed it
very
out for the
much.
board members. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. It came about 4:30 this
I'll forgive you. I wouldn't have looked at it then.
afternoon.
Thank you, Ted.
Thanks, Ted.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Thanks.
Happy.
All right. Take care. I look
Come up
forward
and
to
join
it.
us.
Yep. Bye.
Presentation.
I know. Well, partially because Aaron's not gonna be here next week, and things have to get done by March. I'm not blaming. I'm just saying.
Sorry. You know what? I'll take a fun voting.
Real quick background. So back in October, we were having some minor phone issues, and Kathy and I started a conversation about switching over to VoIP. Voice over the internet. Yeah, for a lot of reasons. And we've done some discussions back and forth, and we got some proposals, and so we have 6 quotes in front of us. I want Kathy to come explain the whole thing, why she thinks we need to do this, and for For the board members who haven't met Kathy before, Kathy Gordon from CrossPoint Connect.
Yeah.
Who has been the town's phone equipment provider for, I don't know,
Well, on this system is 8 years and it's been almost 20.
yeah, I'd say a couple decades.
I'm an ex-employee. I used to live in Akron.
Local business out of Woodstock.
My
So-
ex-husband was a Schoonmaker. Part of the Schoonmaker group.
Anyway, let me turn it over to you to sort of talk us through. I did not print all the proposals. I emailed them to you. I just want
They're all
Kathy to kind of give us an
telephones.
overview. Yeah.
And there's some there's a lot of yada yada, and there's a lot of companies that are out there that sprang up, especially after when COVID hit. Everybody said, I want to take my phone home. Can I do that? And you can't. Not here. You can't unplug your phone and take it home. It won't work because it has a processor here that is connected. They're just monkey phones. You can unplug that and it won't work anywhere else except at an ESI phone system and have it programmed. And that's what CrossPoint's done. My dad started the company in 1983 and he ran 25 pair cable to every phone. And now you have skinny wire. And then we went from analog to digital, from digital to IP, and now we're cloud. So you can still use in-house IP phones. There are people that absolutely do not want anything to deal with being on the internet as far as communications. But the world says, well, we're sorry. You want to do that, that's fine. You'll be a minority. There are those people that have their own, let's see, which town, way out near Westchester, down in Westchester. They created their own in-house, basically like a cloud, they have their own server. But if the server goes down, you're out of communications. What these companies do, hopefully not, all the ones that we've offered to you have more than one server. So when Jersey goes down, Las Vegas picks up. And when Vegas goes, California picks up. And because I was a digital person, my dad sold the company to me back in the 90s, when digital really just started to come into its own. The ESI phone system is wonderful. It's user stupid and easy. You press a button and you have a help key and it tells you what you want to do. These phones don't have a help key. When you need to have something done, an administrator is given that responsibility to connect to one of these providers. And then they're able to change the names, how many times the phone rings, what buttons they have on their phone. But as far as the rest of that kind of programming, it's your provider. You call them and they go into the server to make the changes. It doesn't take very long. Net to phone took 6 hours for me to change all my extensions. And we didn't even know they were done. It was just kind of seamless. So Kathy became Steve and Steve became David, and that was it. I don't really touch them. Once, if I come into your office, I touch everything you have. All of your phones, in your footprints, in your handsets, and I also tell the system what to do. Well, basically, I'm your server provider. I tell the system what your phones are going to look like. So, you've had it. Terry, listen. Oh, by the way, this is Bill. One of the emails that I got from Mr. Didino from Ring Squared was communicating with me because I brought it up, and the supervisor then said to Ted, hey, what can we do here? And he came and he got the other proposals from the other providers so that you would have a look to see. Cheap is great, I'm going to say, but lesser doesn't mean that it's better. The only thing that I would request from every one of these providers is please give me a list of customers that are delighted, because there are many. There's a lawyer who has thrown out 2 of his cloud providers, and he's back having an in-house IP phone system because they were terrible. He couldn't make changes. They couldn't make the changes he asked for, and they took 3 months to make one service. You don't want that kind of reaction. You want to call Kathy Gordon and get her here by at least Thursday. And that's what I found with Net to Phone. That's the one that I have. This E-Link phone is my office phone. I can plug it in anywhere. And there's a list of countries that I can plug it into. All I have to do is have internet access, and I'm answering my office phone. It also twins to my cell phone. And you don't need, if you are a person that is generally in the 30s years old, you don't want anything except your cell phone. I don't want one of these. Why do I need one of these? I want to be able to talk to myself. I have my earbud, I'm happy. It works. You can have that. I'm an old fuddy-duddy.
A couple of the other features is from building to building. Now, with everybody having their own discrete phone number, if somebody calls the town clerk's office and they need to talk to the building department, we have to say, hang up and call this number. With this
That goes
system,
away.
the town clerk could just forward the call directly over to the building department. They'd be able to pick up, answer. The other thing is, does voicemail to email. So if somebody leaves you a voicemail, you don't have to go to the phone, listen to your voicemail. It's going to show up in your email box.
Right.
So there's some really good features
Unites
that
the
are
whole
gonna,
town. Everything is now connected through intercom. It'll ring somebody across town in the Justice Department or at the landfill. They've just seen what's wrong with it. It's great. I love it. I'm on the road all the time. I don't sit at my desk more than an hour a day. And it twins my extension. So if they dial my extension, it rings my cell phone. And then it also tells me in my email who left me a message and who didn't. What politician needs a donation and who doesn't. So you should have, I think, all the proposals.
yeah, there's a total of 6. 3 came from Ring Squared's provider. Ring Squared provided 3. Kathy provided 2 proposals to us. And then Kathy recommended that we reach out to Spectrum because they actually
started to provide
yeah.
us.
And I will tell you, the Spectrum person has followed up with me no less than 10 times already because he sent us the proposal in a matter of days
Yes.
around Thanksgiving. And he actually called me today and said, any word? And I said, we're presenting it tonight. So not expecting you to give us, have discussion about it, but I want Kathy to talk about it to see if you had any questions about overall and the why we need to go to this. And
Well, I can tell you why I chose the one I use. They have 24/7 service, and when I call for service, I don't get, please stay on for the next available representative. If you do, it's less than always 3 minutes. And I get an engineer, and he just says, let me try. And I had one guy who tried everything, and the phone was bad. You lease the phones. After 3 years, your bill goes down if you choose not to get the next upgrade. If your phone breaks, it's 24, you've got another phone. And it's pre-programmed. You don't have to do anything. It's the same as the one that broke. It fell off, it fell in the sink, it no longer functions. And they guarantee that. And if they don't, then they lower your bill. So I wanted that. And I also wanted an engineer. I didn't want somebody who says, well, I really don't know what this is. I don't want to ever hear that. If I don't know, I call ESI right away. I found out, what can I do? But you need to have that kind of reliable response because that's what you've had for 20 years.
a question for you. So for the board, currently Ring Squared brings the phone and internet lines to the building. They are responsible for that. From the connection in the building beyond, that's where Kathy's
That's where I
company
connect
comes
to
in and does all the phone equipment, the wiring, the punch down blocks, all that. Will this change the requirement of what Ring Squared provides us? Will it lessen or raise our bill with them? Or do you have any idea?
Well, believe it or not, it's just your internet. So you want your internet to be, if it's not, for you doing a document, you don't need much, but for voice, you need to have enough, and the voice needs to take priority. If you have a computer that's wired to your desk, you plug the phone in first, and then you plug your computer into the back of the phone. Because you want the phone to have priority, you want voice to have priority. Files coming down a millisecond later, you'll never notice it. But a millisecond pause and you get, that's what you, and when you must be in a bad zone, you don't ever want to be in a bad zone in your phone. Either an intercom, retrieving your voicemail, or receiving a telephone call. So that's really important. You want to know what they need for bandwidth. And I would call the companies and ask them, please give me 5 references. They have to have more than 5 customers that say, they're awesome. I've never had a problem. One company went with somebody who was very nice. They did a wonderful presentation, but they had one server and the server died. And now they're out of communication, and it took 5 days before they got it back. So you don't want something, you want to ask them, how many servers do you have, and what's your, you're up. What's your time? Will I notice the difference if your server dies? Because cyber stuff is awful.
What's the reason for changing?
Your digital system is no longer going to be Kathy Gordon ESI. It's going to be, when I retire, somebody else who does ESI. I've now partnered with 2 younger people than me that is going to provide cybersecurity. They have a whole plethora, which I will be sending to you soon. We're just putting our stuff together. Dan Yaman started, he started in Kingston, and then he developed a corporation, and he had it in Schenectady. He sold it to Ring Squared, basically to their other provider. He and I are now partners, and they offer a lot. They offer, the cameras. We were talking about cameras. We were talking about other kinds of security.
Part of the reason, Aaron, is we do experience with all the different phone lines and everything. We do expect, for example, the highway line for several months now has been ringing on the supervisor phone. But it rings twice, and then if you don't pick up within those 2 rings, it just cuts out. Somewhere there's a crossed line or something.
There's a wire that's crossed somewhere.
It's by going to the internet, it removes all these other sort of outdated functionality of how phones worked.
And you're going to be in a shared circuit. So each of you will not only have one line. The supervisor will not have just his line. All of the numbers will be incorporated in the server, but it's really one giant network of lines that, if it's busy, it recognizes that line. They program it so that it rings only his extension, so it's just an ID, and it's not a true line. It's just an identification number that rings for you, but you have multiple.
Primarily a functionality to increase efficiency, to better customer service for the residents.
You don't get a busy signal? Okay.
Yeah.
And with Net2Phone, what they did, they have 2 different ones. There's over $100 in difference monthly charge. One of them is each phone has a line. The other one was 7 lines in a bundle for the entire town, so that you shared that, basically the pipe. I don't know if 7 of you are all on the phone at the same time, but if that ever would happen, I'm sure it's happened. But you can increase that if you find that necessary. But that they wanted to give you that comparison to show you that you can start out with less.
Is everywhere we need a phone already wired for internet?
No, it just needs to have a category 5E wire.
Right, but do we have Cat 5 wire everywhere?
We do everywhere, with the only possible exception is the transfer station.
Okay.
That may be the only one.
Yeah, it's possible.
They may not, but we can probably work around that. All the other buildings.
Do they have internet there?
They have
Yeah,
to. if
they do.
No, they definitely have internet.
They do.
Yeah.
Then it's not an
Yeah.
issue. It's not an
Do it over
issue.
Wi-Fi.
If it's,
No, they don't get through
I
Wi-Fi.
don't
They have
think they
internet.
they
I think
they
they-
must have some kind of
Yeah.
direct.
I think when Roadrunner was, back in the day, it was run to all the town buildings, including the transfer station. Because they definitely have internet,
Right.
so.
So it looks a lot different, it acts a lot different, and you just get accustomed to it. I have a lawyer firm who just basically said, I don't want any of that kind of sounding stuff. He's 65 years old. I don't want that. I want my old phone system, but I want it new. So we have to find it.
So there's the pricing difference between the 6 companies was relatively narrow. If I remember right, it's probably in the neighborhood of a $200 a month difference disparity between the lowest to the
But it
highest.
should save you money. I'm
Yeah.
hoping, because I didn't look at your current bills. But anything that is copper wired, you're
We're
gonna save. money.
currently paying about $1,050 per month
And
for
I
the lines coming in. And then the contract that we have with you, we purchase the phones that we have, so there's no,
There's
but
no
the
monthly
maintenance-
charge for those.
yeah.
We just gave you.
yeah, but
service
we do have a
contract,
service contract with you.
which you no longer have, because we stopped after Mike and I talked. I said, because why spend the money if you're going to make a change? We're just gonna cross our fingers, and if something goes wrong, 9 out of 10 times, it's a coil cord in the handset. That's not a huge bill. So,
So anyway, for the board members, obviously, it's a lot of information. Take a look at them. I'd like us to try to talk about them a little bit more.
right,
Michael, I'm gonna sort of do you know anything about this? Because I don't know that much about it. Okay,
if they have questions, just tell them to call me.
I'll be honest, Kathy, I don't know how to compare one proposal to the other because it's
Almost
like you said,
all
it's
of it is the
telephonese.
same. That's why you have me, and you can call me anytime. I left you a calendar, and they have my phone number on it, so you can call me. What does it say? They're almost all of them using this phone, just to let you know, that's what it's going to look like. It's Yealink. Who cares about if it's a T64 or a T57? That's just a model number. They have this many buttons. You're going to have, instead of, you no longer gonna have the whole button, everything is parked. So that somebody else can pick it up, and you can also. But there's a lot in there, you can, it is, I haven't even used all of the information.
Maybe you and I can talk offline and you can give me some questions to ask. her.
Yeah, the main question would be the capacity of our connection, because if 7 people are on the phone. all
That's
at
only
once-
one of the proposals. She gave me another proposal where every single person
Well,
is
21.
online.
So there's
So you're not
21
gonna be
current
busy.
phone setups throughout the town.
Correct. Every number that you currently have will be incorporated in the program. And that will choose communication to any extension it chooses.
Yeah, but you were saying if, we need a robust.
Internet.
Yeah,
Need
that's
gigabit?
that's what I'm.
You need, each of the providers that you have from here will tell you what the ratio should be in your internet provision.
So that's a question we should ask.
Yes, we should definitely ask Jeff.
I'll get,
Let's call him Fred. I think that would be so much better. It's Fred.
she was
you know-
talking about, Jerry kept calling me Bill and she had no idea who he was talking about. She kept saying.
I
"Who are
said,
you
who
talking
the
about?"
heck is Bill? He says, well, I had an uncle.
Thank you,
But
appreciate
call
it.
me.
Thank you for coming
These are
tonight.
here. They're this year's, not last year's. So you can have this year's calendar. And I don't know if I brought enough because I didn't know how many board.
You
members
did
there
bring
were.
enough,
Oh,
extra.
yes.
Thank you.
You each have one. And the phone number's on the bottom. If you have a question that's, sounds like a dumb question, there are no dumb questions. And if I don't have the answer, I will find them. Because that's what I do. All right?
And
Thank you.
we have burdened Kathy with our share of questions.
Oh, yes.
over
And
the
I
years.
will be back probably tomorrow. I'm going to put the main office on auto attendant. So
We'll see
that.
you- I'll see you tomorrow then, and we can
You'll
talk
see me
more
tomorrow.
about this. Thank you.
bet.
Thank
So
you
if you
for,
have questions, just
thank you
give
for
them
your
to
time.
me, I'll get the answers for you. Do you want these? I don't know if you have the same one.
We got something else.
To get all of the pages from that to phone?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
You want to leave that with me just in case, not there, but
I have.
I think I got what you emailed me yesterday and I forwarded everything to the board members, so.
This just kind of gives you some introductions. And I think you have this one also from Jerry.
Yes, I do. Okay,
Well, thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate the time, guys. I'm gonna put my extension back on my desk.
okay, we'll move quickly. So the financial reports for November and December have been filed. Kate, they're in your pile there. Thank you for your patience with the delay in them, with the transition of bookkeepers and things. January, obviously, today is February 1st. We don't even have bank statements yet, so I can't do those yet. The correspondence, there was some various residential correspondence, mostly concerning the zoning and stuff. Everything's been forwarded to each of you guys by email. The ECC report I printed, it's just a synopsis of their yearly report. There's a paper copy in your packet. I'm not gonna go through it all. And I wanted to include this because in the course of talking about our insurance policies, which by the way, increased only about 5% this year, which is fabulous. Thank you, Sprague and Colleen, for all that work to make it. We pulled the claims history report that we haven't pulled in a while, and I printed it out so you can see that the claims that have been filed against the town for the last, I think it's the last 8 years. And you can see that we regularly get insurance claims filed against us. Very often we don't end up paying anything, but we regularly get claims filed against us. So I wanted you to see that. Grant updates. There's a supervisor's update. The Algarville Firehouse, the siren is working. The bell is working. The rope was put in. The heat is now working. I will, hopefully we are now able to move toward closeout of that project. There are some various paperwork to go back and forth. I'm hoping within the next 2 to 3 months, we can get that finally closed out.
When did that start?
Before I was supervisor,
Yeah.
a very long time ago. And we'll wrap up New York Rising. Well, this project here at this building's been done for 2.5 years, and that started at the same time. So, but in fairness, the Algarville Firehouse didn't start right away. It was a much later project. But keep you up to speed on all that. The Bridge New York, after the initial meeting with the neighbors that we had, public meeting, they made some requests for some changes. Jeff and I actually this afternoon, met with HPEA. They explored the possibility of making the channel narrower. It does involve a little bit more money, approximately $100,000 more to be able to make the channel narrower. That was to be able to anchor into the bedrock. It can be done. We told them to move forward with that as the new plan. It will increase the price slightly, but the response back to the neighbors who were concerned about a wider channel, more water flowing through, more erosion, the natural flow of the bridge will be the same size as it is now for the abutments.
Channel, you're talking the river.
The waterway channel, yeah. Because the abutments with the new proposal, because of where the bedrock is, currently the abutments, some of them are literally sitting on nothing. So to get them so they're sitting on bedrock, they had to widen, which would have widened the flow of the water. They've now investigated and found ways to keep it the same. It's a different system. The wall of the abutment is going to cost a little bit more to be able to do. But in the long run, it won't change the size of the bridge or anything, but what will change is where the supports of the bridge are. And we think that this will satisfy the downstream neighbors who have concerns and the one upstream neighbor. The oxbowing of the waterway, that's something that's just the nature. Nature is going to continue to find its own a new path. And they said over the next probably 100 years, that one little peninsula land will probably be gone within 100 years, but nothing we do with the bridge, we could get rid of the bridge and not even have a bridge, and that will still happen. You know, that's just natural flow of water. With all that being said, we're going to now schedule a follow-up meeting with the neighbors. We just said it today. It's going to be on February 20th, a Tuesday night here at 6:30. I'm going to get a letter out tomorrow to all the neighbors that we sent to the first one, which was everybody within 500 feet of the bridge. I think it was 1,000 feet. I don't remember. But
It was 500, but maybe.
maybe it was 500. There was about 15 neighbors that were within the direct proximity of the bridge that we sent letters to last time. Most of them showed up. So we're going to have this follow-up meeting here with HDEA. They can show this presentation of this change and just to sort of bring them up to speed. We're still on track for going out to bids this fall and construction starting in the spring of 2020. So that's where that all stands. The 2024 Bridge New York applications were submitted, and it's now in the culverts are in the state's hands. The Project 32 bridge is in the hands of the regional DOT and Ulster County, and we will find out sometime in the next 3 to 9 months whether we were awarded the grants or not, or the funding, not grants, but funding. That's where that all stands. Food pantry, they sent us, they always send us an annual update. This was by email. It's included in your packet. I'm not going to go into the details. The upcoming meetings and events. Well, you can report out on the HBC, Kate. I know there's something coming up. But as far as meetings, the only, other than the normal town board meetings, the only other meeting, special meeting will be this February 20th meeting. And that's all I have. I do have, I'm sorry, I have one more thing. Regarding the new positions for the chief constable, I've had lengthy talks now this week with county personnel office. And the same with the constable position in general, the ones that took the test. They were not aware of the qualifications that Department of Criminal Justice required, meaning the county. I brought this to their attention. They are trying to resolve how to fix that in the job description. It's a requirement to be able to be eligible to be a peace officer in New York State by state law. It was not part of the countywide description of required qualifications. So we're trying to resolve the dilemma of that. They are fine with the changing of lead constable to chief constable. They have no issues with that. But they don't want to issue the job description until we resolve this qualifications issue. So she meaning our representative at the county personnel, is going to talk with the personnel director. I'm getting information from Department of Criminal Justice and trying to put the people together. Apparently, the way it's been described to me is Department of Criminal Justice, this rules at issue is corrections officers training is not reciprocal to qualify as training of a peace officer. In past, Department of Criminal Justice simply did not adhere to their own policy, and they approved corrections officers to become peace officers and police officers. Somewhere along the way, they started adhering, because I asked, when did this change? And the answer was, it did never change. We just weren't following it. Now they're adhering to it. So we have 2 constables who are corrections officers and utilize their corrections officers training and are not eligible currently. They would have 1 year to meet eligibility. However, it's 180 hours of training. And for a part-time job that some of them may not even work 180 hours a year, they may not be willing to go to 180 hours of training. So we're trying to resolve the issues and the discrepancy. Hopefully we'll have that resolved soon. But I just wanted to, because you had asked Charlotte, I wanted to bring you guys up to speed. And yeah, so continuing to be worked on. And the other part about the code, I'll deal with that in discussion. So with that, Mary Lou, any attorney report?
I have nothing of note.
Okay. We like that. Kate, town clerk, tax collector report?
So for the month of January, town clerk, $54,744.16 were collected. I'm still working on closing out the reports. I haven't received monthly reports yet from any of the departments. And I haven't received bank statements yet, but that was the figure that I pulled from the computer this morning. As far as tax collection in the month of January, we collected $5,954,010.75. The tax warrant has been satisfied to the supervisor in the amount of $3,154,902.38. And I just want to give a huge thank you to both my deputies, Christina and Courtney, for all their help in the success of the collection of taxes, along with keeping up with the town clerk duties of our office.
Thank you very much, ladies. They do an amazing job. And thank you. I apparently missed that last check that came in.
That was yesterday.
Oh, nice. I haven't seen those bank statements yet. The highway superintendent report, as you know, it seems to snow every day, and in the upper parts of the town, they've been out every morning dealing with it. It's small amounts of snow, but they continue to converse with the school superintendent, on a daily basis, and just want to say thank you to our highway crew workers for all that they do with these storms and long hours that they work in dangerous conditions. So we thank them for that. The bucket truck that we approved is in our possession. We ended up going to Pennsylvania and getting it, but we picked it up and it is now in our possession and is in process of being licensed and registered and insured and should be on the road by some point next week. And
Can we go up there?
what's that?
Can we go up there?
That's between you and the highway crew. You'll have to ask Jared if that's okay.
I'm just hoping to get some lights on the trees out there in the wintertime.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, now that we have a bucket truck, we can ask for assistance. Yeah.
No, that's what I want.
I think that falls apart.
Yeah. So liaison reports, and only because I always forget, I'm gonna start with Kate tonight with historic preservation. I apologize. I always forget things.
All right, so the HPC on 2/4 at 1 o'clock at the Harold Linton Community Center. There's going to be historic preservation consultant Marissa Marvelli, and she will cover the financial benefits of listing your home and town historic districts on the National Register of Historic Places. She will go over tax credits and grant programs that are available for homeowners, commercial developers, nonprofits, and local governments. She'll outline the whole process from start to finish and provide them also with loan resources that are available for restoring historic structures. The HPC is hoping to schedule 3 to 4 Hamlet Talk series for this year, and they were hoping to hold Allergervilles in March. So I was trying to find out if you think that's going to be a possibility for them next month.
No better by Monday.
Okay, because we have a meeting on the 12th, so I'd like to be able to talk to them for.
I don't know if it'll be
Planning.
ready for March. It maybe have to be May or June, but
Okay.
it may not be turned over to the public yet.
Gotcha. Okay. And then that's it. The next meeting is the 12th because their meeting normally would fall on President's Day. So they were meeting the week prior.
Great, thank you very much. Emily, anything to report from the court?
No.
Okay, and that's fine. Aaron?
Oh, I do
yes.
have one thing, the email that came from.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how important it is.
Well, it's somewhat important. So apparently we have a person in the court who only speaks Mandarin. We are required to provide a translator and
Interpreter?
an interpreter. Yeah, interpreter.
For spoken, you mean?
Yeah, for spoken, yep, interpreter, thank you. And this is a new thing, the judge located one, a person who was able to do that. They obviously charge us a fee for the services. They also requested mileage. The judge sent an email, was it today or?
Today, yeah.
Yeah, that just requesting how we deal with that, and I hadn't seen it. Emily clued me into it. I'm gonna reply back that we pay the standard mileage rate, and they would just include that on their invoice. And we certainly, you know, if this is an individual who was coming here from a location not in close proximity, but also not that far away, but it's a couple hour drive, and they're asking for mileage, and we pay other vendors mileage too. So we will pay them the appropriate mileage rate, and that will just be included in their fees. And that would just go under the court's professional fees budget line. So just not something we experience on a regular basis of needing an interpreter, so. But
That concludes my court.
Okay,
Karen?
so on that, we need to look at our calendars and propose dates to do the annual review, and I'll copy you on, we'll do
How
that.
much time do we need to set that?
It's usually, it depends. It could be, usually the bulk of it gets done in like a 3-hour period, but I usually do it. We should look at our calendars. I usually do it during court out while they're open, so we just go while they're open, and look at the documents. And then usually the bulk of it is over 3 hours, and then there's usually like an hour or two follow-up.
Okay.
That needs to, it depends on how fast.
And we need to adopt whatever resolution we adopt, accepting it by the end of March.
Yeah.
So you've got
Yeah, we have
essentially
time.
2 months.
But I like to give them, they like a few weeks notice before we schedule it, so they can make sure that. Yeah. And then in that email that I'll send, I send all the documents that we use, and so you'll have those. Okay, very excited to report, we had our first agricultural advisory committee last night. It, there were 5 members present. And then we, basically it was an introductory meeting on how the committee should form, and they scheduled their next meeting already. So Kate, I need to.
Already.
Oh, you did? Okay.
All set. Sorry.
So that was exciting, and very energized group. The ECC had a meeting scheduled on Tuesday, but they didn't have a quorum, so it wasn't an official meeting, but they had lots of members of the public there. So they oh, I'm in the wrong notes for some reason. So they first, I think you already mentioned this, Mike, but they submitted their annual report. And a lot of the stuff they talked about at their meeting were these topics. And then they basically are starting to plan their Earth Day event. And they're hoping to do a collab with the HBC. I don't know if this has started yet.
I haven't heard that yet.
And then one of their goals for the upcoming year is to continue to strategize ways to promote and expand the pollinator pathway program. They're very excited for the new website and have been submitting drafts of text to me. The plastic bag recycling will reopen potentially for March. What they're going to do, just for you, what they're going to do is a week out, just confirm that the weather is good. If it's not good weather, then they're not going to have it. So they haven't announced it yet. What was that? Oh. Well, in the meantime, you can take bags to Hannaford's and Walmart locations. Okay.
A Walmart thing?
Walmart
Yeah.
takes it too.
Oh.
And so the other thing that they're starting to talk about, which they would need to initiate or request for the town board, is a consultant named Michael Gage does old tree growth documentation, and because they think there's these old growth oaks at that park that's behind the solar array, or not the park, the parcel, where they wanted to propose that there was a park. They were interested in seeing what that would look like to have some of those trees actually documented. Then there was a lot of public participation. The topic of controlled burn came up, and whether or not that was something that should be promoted. And then they also talked about the issue with toxic waste dumping in our region. Their third Thursday, oh shoot, I don't have that up. The third Thursday this month is, or in February, is creating a documentary on carbon capture, Thursday, February 15th at 6:30. So it's about how this documentary was done on the world of disinformation. How does your citizen determine what is truthful? Okay, it's this Tree Media Group. So that is what you'll be learning about at the third Thursday. The planning board meeting had a very lively public hearing this month, where I counted 90 people present. I think it was the most I'd ever seen at a planning board meeting. That was on the topic of the commercial events facility that the Acworth Speedway has, and we've heard a little bit about that topic in some of the zoning. They had a very full agenda. I think I left at 9:30 that night. And then they had a follow-up at their workshop meeting on that topic, but they're continuing to see lots of activity. And then we obviously have appointments to fill the vacancies, or those seats, not the vacancies, but the seats tonight. The transfer station, I don't have much to report. Mike and I need to touch base about doing some interviews and staff reviews. Yeah, great. I think, yeah, I saw something about that. And then I had something else. Website, I need to schedule that meeting with Kate and Mike. I keep forgetting to send that email so we can talk about staff training, scheduling the staff training. And I didn't make notes, so. Oh, in the code enforcement office, I did check in about storage, so whenever we're ready.
And I had more conversation.
Okay, great.
And that's what led to tonight's discussion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, on that, I
Yeah.
see, great, okay.
So
I think that's all I have to report.
it's a lot. Thank you. Charlotte.
All right. For the elder care program, there were 2 new signups, I believe. Sorry, I know them. We had 2 signups, and there was a lot of a higher amount of calls regarding elder relatives, especially on the days that we have the very low temperatures and the snow and freezing rain. Everyone was fine, thankfully, and that's what we have for elder care. For housing committee, they sent everyone an annual report that they wrote that came in yesterday. That's really what they were talking about working on at their last meeting. And I was not able to finish the meeting. We're still waiting to hear back from a couple members, but there may potentially be a seat depending on what happens after I hear back from a couple members. We didn't stagger any term limits for them when we established the committee, so I told them that starting next year at the end of this 2-year term for everyone, we'll start to stagger with appointments next January to make sure that we don't lose everyone all at once. So check out their report on recommendations that they've given us. Some of them were recommendations they've given us, and other ones were recommendations for us to consider on things for housing and to promote housing in town. And then for the youth and communities, the recreation department, we have an adult paint class, which is scheduled for next Friday, the 9th at 10 a.m. And we have the kids paint class on the 13th at 6 p.m. here at the community center. They're also doing Valentine's Day festivities with the after school, kids in the after school program on February 14th. And the only other thing I want to add to that report, they didn't have a meeting this month, but on the day that their meeting was, I came just to meet with Ashley and touch base for the new year. And I just kind of did a walkthrough of the property in here and in the back, and I have some stuff that I'm going to bring to us hopefully next week. With some things I found and saw for stuff that needs to be improved and fixed for certain things. So I'm gonna get that prepared and present it to you guys hopefully for next week.
I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
I had a quick question.
Yep.
Is Kai from the county planning department, is he coming to
Oh,
their next meeting?
Kai should-
Housing?
I should be coming to the
Okay.
next housing committee meeting. I'm supposed to hear back from him this week, so I guess if I don't hear from him tomorrow, I'll ask again Monday about when the county contract is gonna start for the housing site inventory. Because we originally put January as a start date, hoping the zoning code was put through so they could do it with the new zoning changes, but because we haven't put those through yet, we didn't want the work to not start, so I'm waiting on an answer to confirm when the consultants will be starting work on that. So hopefully, if I don't hear from him next week, at the very least, I'll hear from him at the committee
Great.
meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Michael?
All right, I'm gonna try to be fast. ZBA, so, spoke with Chair Zarowski. They're very happy that they may get an alternate, seat, so, good news on that. They had I think, granted 2 variances this past month.
Well, there's 3, is we cleared up 2, and,
There's 1 still going.
one's with the family circle over there on.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. On the ambulance, so I spoke with Joe Vitti early in the week. He was curious to know if there were any updates on the contract. I told him it's on the agenda for this week, so I was happy to hear that. He told me they did just get a grant there, pretty substantial one that they're going to use to purchase CPR machines. So congratulations to them on that. On KFAS, we did receive email from Mr. Miraco
I didn't share that with the board. so-
Okay, so basically, wanted to have a discussion about possibly purchase of a future new ambulance and whether or not the board would consider utilizing any town funds to help support that. So obviously, we still have some conversations we wanted to have about current financing. I don't know if we've had a chance to.
That letter's gonna go out tomorrow. I didn't get it out yet, but it'll go out tomorrow.
So we'll meet with them, discuss everything, and kind of figure out what's next. Nothing really to report on the fire district. I did see some people on one of the apps giving them kudos for responding to some gas odors, and everybody was universally applauding them and professionalism coming out, checking everything, making sure people felt comfortable. So just a reminder how amazing it is that we have all of these great volunteers that help support the community here. Parks, I'm coordinating a meeting with Jeff. I'm gonna get together next Friday just to sit down and talk through any issues, concerns, and you know, obviously it's going to start to pick up more as spring comes and people start to get out, grass starts growing and stuff. So just see what he has in mind for that. And the constabulary, I was talking with Rich, and we're gonna set up a time to meet, go through some of the processes, just get me up to speed on more about what their involvement is in town. We all saw the report. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but just the bulleted items: 10 neighbor complaints, quality of life complaints, 2 traffic complaints, 1 environmental complaint, 4 new building department violations, 1 court case opened, 9 ongoing court cases, and 0 closed. And Spectrum is back on the agenda, so we're going to talk about it today.
Yep. Thank
Exciting.
you, Michael.
All right.
Assessor's office, they are very, very busy, just like in January with tax time, the assessors are collecting, exemption paperwork. It's a steady stream of people. Thank you to Joanne and Jeremy for all their work that they're doing and helping people through the process. Exemptions can be very confusing, especially to some of the elderly. And, they do a really good job of assisting and explaining. I will be at the March regular meeting, we will be having a presentation from the revaluation potential company. This is the one that Jeremy recommends highly and most communities are using. So they're gonna come do an initial presentation to us of estimate of cost, estimate of time. Jeremy will also be here for that meeting. Regarding parks, the grant for the bathrooms, we still have not seen a contract from the county, so we can't go out to request for proposals for first engineering and then for actual construction. So as soon as I get that contract, I've been asking several times and keep getting told it's coming, it's coming. So eventually we will get the contract proposal from them. There is indication that they are going to release a third parks funding opportunity, which would include potential access to water. This has been Larry, as well as a number of other residents who kayak regularly have reached out to me. Legislator Stewart, who represents Marbletown and Hurley, has been doing most of the legwork on this. As soon as we get an actual call for proposals, I hope to be able to put something in, and Larry is very eager to help us develop any proposals. And he thinks that we can do a lot of the work in-house, and the highway superintendent has agreed to, according to Larry, has agreed to assist in these endeavors. So on the horizon.
When that grant opens, I'm happy to help write it.
Absolutely.
If
Thank
we
you.
need it.
Yep. We'll just need an estimate of cost it's just very similar to the parks, very straightforward application.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of in-kind donation. That's what I deal with for my grants at the pantry for volunteer work, so.
Yep,
I'm
absolutely.
happy to help with that, because I know it's harder to write.
I think that's all I have. And also in your packet, I did update our flow chart of our employee job descriptions and department heads and supervisory employees, and just updated it for current, and I did it as of today only because there were some things that we did in January that are reflected in this. So next is public comment. Charlie, do you have anything you want to say? And then we'll go to online.
No, we're going.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brock, thank you for being so patient and waiting.
Good evening. I need to speak to the town board tonight about Supervisor Baden's malfeasance, be it either intentional or due to cognitive impairment, regarding his handling of the back parking lot and the Article 78 filed against the town. For those of you that don't know, my name is Sue Bruck, and I'm the one who filed the Article 78 regarding the municipal parking lot after I had exhausted every other option. It is now 13 months later, and the parking lot is no safer. You need to be aware that as a town body, your lack of action now leaves you wide open for gross negligence cases. You have been put on warning more than once that the back parking lot is not safe. You have been advised Supervisor Baden shows a bias where I am concerned. You have continued to allow Supervisor Baden to be in charge of the day-to-day activities regarding the back parking lot, which facilitated the attempted murder on December 30th, 2022, rather than have board member Enuin take over these duties. Supervisor Baden's continued biases have delayed any safety measures being put into place. It is time for you to step in and oversee the situation, as Supervisor Baden is unwilling or unable to put the town's best interest first. He gatekeeps what information he shares with you. His responses to the petition have been untrue and at times defaming, and I don't believe that he has shared those responses with you. The petition was filed in April, and it is now February. This could have been handled expeditiously, professionally, and without an Article 78, and the town could be a lot safer if Supervisor Baden had been removed from the process. The town board and the public need to know what's happening behind the scenes. One of Supervisor Baden's statements in response to this petition was that I don't understand the town budget. You can check this, by the way, by checking with Scott, your attorney for the case, or any of the entities that I'm going to be mentioning. He, of course, is going to say that I don't know anything because he likes to defame and discredit me, as he did with the Ulster County government, wherein he wrote that there are mental health concerns regarding me since the death of my husband. This is both untrue as well as defaming. For the record, I have never had any law enforcement agency called to my home, my place of business, or any other location because I became so emotionally unstable and violent that I punched a hole in a wall. I have never been required, asked, or expected to complete an anger management course, and I will leave that there. But this is again why I have asked for him to be removed from any business that pertains to me or my late husband. Now, my response, of course, is what you all know, that the constabulary is listed in at least 3 places on the budget. They're listed as court officers, they are listed for code enforcement, and they have their own budget, which includes their shift hours, which also includes patrol. So now all of that information had to go back through the attorneys, which is billable hours, mind you. Then he responded with the constabulary isn't allowed to work past 9 p.m. Are you aware that these are the responses that he is sending through the town attorney to my attorney? Because this statement came not long after you as a body passed a motion to approve a stipend for any constabulary that worked after hours or overnight. So that is again another lie. Then it was the state won't accept the law if it's not filed within 30 days after a town approves it, which any of you, and I did myself, can check by calling the state. I've had lovely conversations with them, and Supervisor Baden was also aware of that. Again, it's just a matter of delay tactics and another untruth on billable hours. And it's also without the appropriate goal in mind. The goal is safety for the town. And he has lost sight of that, or perhaps did not ever have that. Instead, his goal has been to come after me personally. And he will tell you that I am coming after him personally. I'm not. I actually don't have a concern for Michael Baden as a person one way or another. But Supervisor Baden, acting in his official capacity as a professional, I have concerns. And if he cannot handle being called to task when he does things that are wrong, then he does not deserve to be in a position of power or leadership in our town, and he can feel free to resign again if he chooses. Supervisor Baden has then come back with that there are no available hours for the constabulary, which I will just leave you to fact check that for yourself. Please check your actuals at the end of last year, and you will see that there are hundreds, if not over 1,000 hours available for the constabulary to do shift work and to be on patrol and getting safety back in our back parking lot, even if it's only to deter crime. The people who were in that back parking lot were so comfortable having been there, the one man being there 5 weeks and never vetted, also a convicted violent criminal, were so comfortable being in that back parking lot. And I want you to think about if this were your backyard, that they were smoking meth in broad daylight. I want you to consider that. I want you to consider that as a resident. I want you to consider that as a town governing body, that you have visitors, employees, and residents in that parking lot. And that is how comfortable they felt, because at the same time that Supervisor Baden was allowing unlimited access to that parking lot, he also took away the patrol, leaving everybody in that area unsafe. Supervisor Baden's next response was that just call the sheriff's department or the state troopers. If there's a problem in the back parking lot, we don't need to be worried about this. I would like you to make 2 phone calls, one to each of those jurisdictions, and they will tell you what Supervisor Baden knows, as do I, that neither jurisdiction is responsible for enforcing local law. That responsibility lies with the local law enforcement agency. So we should not be eschewing that responsibility and trying to put it on other organizations when it's outside of their purview. He also has led you to believe that you need to have new signs for the parking lot. That was not true. The signs were totally fine. And he has also led you to believe that somehow you need to have a security consultant. I'm going to say the same thing I said a year ago, that you need to have security consultants like you need to have electrical consultants come in and tell you to turn off the lights. This is laughable because you're asking security consultants to come in and look at the fact that you have hundreds of hours for patrol that weren't used, money available but have chosen not to install security cameras, a law that is ready and should be enforced. These are all things that you can do, and you do not need consultants to make that happen. So now I am going to put the burden on you. You have been told what is happening behind the scenes. I'm going to guess that none of you are aware that these were the untruths going back and forth between attorneys, because if you were aware of it, then you would also be guilty of malfeasance. So now is the time to act appropriately and get safety back in our town where it belongs. And I will leave you with that information and hope that you act accordingly. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is town board member time. If anybody wishes to add anything.
I just meant to ask a request at the beginning of the meeting for the in memoriam at the end of the meeting when we are employment. If we could please add Manfred Kastner, who passed away earlier this week, who was a World War II veteran that was 100 years old from Stone Ridge, who I was close friends with.
Oh, Kastner.
Kastner.
Thank you, absolutely.
Also, like, National Rocks Pizza that.
ROHB one. Obviously, it's ongoing litigation. I'm not going to respond, but I will say I have shared with you all the communications with you.
I was just gonna say, I don't feel like I know what I'm allowed to say or not say, but we, being named parties, are copied on correspondence.
And I'm just gonna leave it at that. You have been shared with all the correspondence between the attorneys and us, so. Moving next to seeker local law C, which is the amendment to chapter 140 zoning. We have to complete the seeker now that we've closed the public hearing and want to consider the law. I prepared a part 2 and a part 3. The part 2, being that this is a local law, an administrative, I have checked no impact for all categories. I've then prepared for part 3, where I state that Town of Rochester Town Board has considered the impacts of adoption of local law 3, and that's because it would be changing from 3C to 3 with adoption. Amending chapter 140 zoning of the Town of Rochester Code, and finds there will be no significant impacts on the community with the adoption of this local law. Subject matter and consideration, adult use cannabis related businesses is allowable under New York State recent legislation. Municipality can address hours of operation where within a community such business may operate, and to a lesser degree how such business may operate. The local law addresses these items. So based on that, I would ask, this is the recommended resolution. The Town of Rochester, as lead agency for the seeker review of local law C of 2024, the Town of Rochester Town Board determines the action will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment based on the town board review. I'm sorry, I have to put the word review. Number 1, having been determined as a type 1 action under 6 NYC RR Part 617.4 B1 and 2, having held 2 public hearings, referring such local law to the Ulster County Planning Board and Town of Rochester Planning Board for comment, considering comments received and having reviewed parts 2 and 3 of the EAF full form encompassing the environmental quality review of such action. So I'd ask for that motion.
I'll make that motion.
And a second.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, this is a roll call vote because it's seeker.
Councilman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Tindall.
Aye.
Councilwoman Anon.
I
Councilman Smeesa.
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Next, we have to do seeker on the Sundown Road Culvert Bridge, New York, 2024 application. This is the recommended resolution as lead agency for the seeker review of the Sundown Road Culvert Bridge, New York, 2024 application. Town of Rochester Town Board determines the action is a type 2 action under 6 NYC RR Part 617.5 C2. And no further, sorry for the typo, seeker review is necessary. Flip flop the R in the Q. Do I have that?
Some people say it like that.
Yeah. Some people say seeker,
Circa.
yeah.
Sorry.
Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Is there any discussion? Just to clarify, if we do receive the funding, we will have to do another resolution at that time. I did clarify with Mary Lou. This was to allow me to provide the seeker forms as part of the application. So, I have a motion and a second. Get a roll call vote.
Aye.
Councilman Dindal?
Aye.
Councilwoman Anawen?
Aye.
Councilwoman Smasak? Aye. Supervisor Brady?
Aye. Next, the Project 32 Road Bridge, New York, 2024 application as lead agency of the seeker review of the Project 32 Road Bridge, New York, 2024 application. Town of Rochester Town Board determines the action is a type 2 action under 6 NYC RR Part 617.5 C2, and no further seeker review is necessary.
Make that motion.
A second.
Second.
Same for this one as the last one. And what that C2 is replacement of an existing structure. It's classified as a type 2 action. So roll call vote.
Councilman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Dindal?
Aye.
Councilman Anawen?
Aye.
Councilwoman Smasak? Aye. Supervisor Brady?
Aye. Moving into resolutions, actions on the minutes. Recommend resolution, the Town of Rochester Town Board accepts the minutes of the January 4 organizational meeting, the January 4 regular business meeting, January 10 and January 20 zoning informational meetings, January 11th public hearing, January 11th workshop meeting, and January 25th audit meeting as presented, and with that one amendment that Kate made that we circulate by email.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Second.
Kate, thank you very much. A lot of meetings, a lot of information, and we appreciate all the work you do. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Next, acceptance of a donation. It was TBD, but I have a donation in your packet. Town of Rochester Town Board accepts donation singular of $20 from Carol Metzger, and that was for the flowers from the. Ashley said it was from the Thanksgiving, but I'm going to double check. She meant Thanksgiving, but anyway, it was $20 donation for flowers for one of the events that the recreation department did.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Next, adoption of local law 3 of 2024. Town of Rochester Town Board renames local law C of 2024, a local law amending chapter 140 zoning of the code of the town of Rochester. The local law 3 of 2024 and adopt same. Request the town clerk file notice of adoption with the New York Department of State, the Ulster County Planning Board, Town of Rochester Code Enforcement and Planning Board, and publish the notice in the environmental notice bulletin.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I'll second.
Kate, I'll get you the ENB. Otherwise, I think I've got everything else to you. So, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Thank you for that. Next is authorizing a contract. The Town of Rochester Town Board authorized the town supervisor to sign a contract, and Mary Lou would like us to add as presented with Marbletown First Aid Unit, High Falls, New York, in the amount of $23,000 to be paid in 4 installments as per the contract for emergency first aid services for the High Falls and Albertville area of the town, comprising the High Falls Ambulance District for the period of January 1, 2024 through December 31, 2024. Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
I'll second.
The changes in the contract were obviously the date changes from 23 to 24, the dollar amount, and I did add in the financial reporting as we discussed, that they report back in a format as requested by the High Falls Ambulance Budget Advisory Committee. So those were the only changes from the existing contract. That's why you got the second version. Mary Lou pointed out I had forgotten about the financial part. I'd only done the dates and the amount, so that was in the second fix. Any other discussion, questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Great, I will sign that and get that to them for their signature. Next, authorizing a contract. Town of Rochester Town Board authorizes the town supervisor to sign a contract with DDQs LLC, West Point, New York, to provide TOR with various physical site security consulting services. DDQs will assist TOR in assessing potential security threats and vulnerabilities and in analyzing, developing, and creating concept designs for site security solutions for certain designated areas within the town of Rochester. Sorry, I cut and pasted this out of the contract, so it's going. We could eliminate the in the parentheses part of the resolution. These efforts are intended to complement and enhance TOR's existing security measures, efforts, and protocols. Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions? And Mary Lou has worked diligently on this contract with the vendor and has signed off on it. Anything else, Mary Lou, you want to add?
Yep, just one comment. It's mentioned in the
Oh, you froze up.
contract, but do not get to attach the proposal from October 13th as Exhibit A.
I'm sorry, you froze up in the middle of that.
Okay, it's in the contract, but please do not forget to annex as Exhibit A, their October 13th, 2023 proposal.
They're October, what date?
13th
13, 2023.
proposal.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask that we amend the resolution to say the exhibit, or October 13, 2023 proposal shall be annexed as Exhibit A in the contract. So we'll add that in the last sentence. So, do you want to amend?
Yeah. I'll
Motion
make
to
a motion.
amend? Okay, and
Yeah, I'll second.
second the amendment? Okay. Any
Thank
further
you.
discussion or questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. And just for the record, this is not just about the parking lot. This is about all town of Rochester properties that are being reviewed by this consultant, how we can make it better for our employees and for the public. So it is not just about the parking lot. Next, we have a request for use of town facilities. The Town of Rochester Town Board authorizes Wild Earth Wilderness School to utilize the town municipal parking lot as a drop-off and pickup point for their bus to camp for the summer 2024 season. The dates of use are July 8th through August 2nd, 2024 on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. The bus will pick up between 9 a.m. and 9:15 a.m. and drop off between 3:15 p.m. and 3:30 p.m., barring any weather delays or extenuating circumstances. Wild Earth Wilderness School has provided certificate of liability insurance, naming the town as an additional insurer. I have that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. For discussion, they utilized this last year. Originally, they were going to use it at the town hall. We kind of ran into a bottleneck because our own camp was picking up at the same time. There was confusion of the parents of which bus is mine. And we tried one being up by the highway and one being down the bottom. We resolved it by moving them over to the community center, the parking lot, municipal parking lot. It went the entire season, the rest of the season without a hitch, and they're requesting to utilize it again. It's simply a drop-off and pickup point. Their parents wait there in their cars, the kids get on the bus, they leave, and then they come back in the afternoon. Yes.
And this was, this all worked well with the community center after the change last year, after all the aids in our summer program. It went
Yes,
fine after.
by moving it to two different locations. When it was at one location, we tried it for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, and traffic.
The traffic, there was confusion with the parents as to which bus am I going to? And we tried by separating them physically with one down by the pavilion and one up top. It didn't work. So we came up with this solution about halfway through the first week. The rest of the summer, they utilized our municipal parking lot. It worked seamlessly for them. They were so thrilled. This is why they're reaching out to us now in February already, asking for it again.
And do our kids, if you know or not, do our kids, our program always get picked up at the park normally?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering since this was closer. if it
No,
would be
no,
easier, but if
the
they would
reason
get
we
picked
do
up
it
at the park,
there
yeah.
is because on the Mondays and Fridays, they're at the park,
Mhm.
and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So this way, the parents drop them at the park and pick them up at the park every day.
Okay, so
5 days a
that's
week.
their routine. I was
Yeah,
just
that's
one
wondering if
location.
this was what your-
No,
for the
because
parents here.
their activities are over there, so rather than come here, originally they used to come here and then they would walk over there. It's safer and better if the parents drop them there. The bus picks them up there, they leave, they come back. It was the confusion with 2 separate school buses and parents not realizing, and so by separating the 2 pickups into 2 totally different locations, we solved all the problems.
Got it. All right.
So. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, next, appointment of clerk to Justice Alba. Pursuant to Town Law, Article 3, Section 21B, and upon advice and consent of Justice Alba, the town board hereby appoints Leanne Warren to serve as the clerk to Justice Alba effective January 1, 2024, as funded per the 2024 grade and wage schedule. Justice Alba shall determine the duties and work schedule of the clerk to justice subject to the adopted budget. I'm going to make that resolution. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, do you prefer a roll call vote or, okay. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. We have various appointments to make. The first, there was only one interviewee, and we have agreed that those people will be appointed. So appointment to the Historic Preservation Commission. The Town of Rochester Town Board appoints Phil Christopher to serve as a member of the Historic Preservation Commission for a term ending December 31, 2026, and requests the town clerk advise of the oath of office.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Kate, I'll get you his email. I don't have a phone number, but I have an email. Board of Assessment Review. Town of Rochester Town Board appoints Mark Grasso to serve as a member of the Board of Assessment Review for a term ending September 30, 2028, and requests the town clerk advise of the oath of office required.
Make that motion.
Do I have a second? The reason it's September 30th, that is governed by state law, the Board of Assessment Review. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Zoning Board of Appeals, Town of Rochester Town Board reappoints Charlie Fisher to serve as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term ending December 31, 2028, and requests the town clerk advise of the oath of office required.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Appointment in the Zoning Board of Appeals alternate. Town of Rochester Town Board appoints Hans.
Sharon,
How do you say it?
I think it's Sharon.
It's Sharon? I'm gonna go with it. Thank you. To fill a vacancy as alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term ending December 31, 2024, and request the town clerk advise of the oath of office required.
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstained. Now, the next 4, we had multiple candidates. The way we will do this is, before we vote, I'm going to ask for nominations. Any board member can nominate any of the names that, and the list is in front of you. I put the list of the people we interviewed. If we only get one nomination, then we will vote on that person. If we get multiple nominations, we will hold a vote on the name. I'll go to each board member and you'll say who you want to vote. the majority, if we have 3 votes, that will be the person then filled in. And so, for first, this is the planning board 7-year term, ending in December 31, 2030. I would like to nominate, Peter Nelson. Do I have any other nominations?
Oh, I just have a question. What
Yes.
happened here with the crossed out person?
They put out.
Oh,
They,
okay.
he, I'm sorry, you weren't at the, he emailed me the night of the, and said he had taken a new position. I'm assuming it might work related and would not be available, but that he would like to get involved in future.
Okay.
So, he thanked us for our time and said he just didn't think he had the time to commit. So, yeah, and I remember that was a person that had spoken to you, so that's why it's crossed out. He chose not to, apply. So I'm nominating Peter Nelson. Is there any other nominations for that position? Okay, hearing none, with the resolution then, the Town of Rochester Town Board appoints Peter Nelson to serve as a member of the planning board for a term ending December 31, 2030, and requests the town clerk advise of the oath of office requirement. Do I have that motion for that resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Next, this is for the replacement of a vacancy through December 31, 2026. In essence, a 3-year term. Do I have a motion for candidate?
Rick Jones.
Is there another nomination? Okay, so then the Town of Rochester Town Board appoints Rick Jones to fill a vacancy as a member of the planning board for a term ending December 31, 2026, and requests the town clerk advise of the oath of office requirement. Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Okay, next, in Board of Ethics, we have 1 full seat and 1 alternate. The first is the Town of Rochester Town Board appoints, I'm sorry, do I have a motion? Sorry, got ahead of myself. Do I have a nomination? Excuse me. There were 3 candidates for Board of Ethics.
I nominate Ken Stevens.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay. So the Town of Rochester Town Board appoints Ken Stevens, fill a vacancy as a member of the Board of Ethics for a term ending December 31, 2027, and requests the town clerk advise of the oath of office required. Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. And next, to fill the vacancy of the alternate member through December 31, 2026. Do I have a nomination?
Kathy Frankel.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Okay. The resolution then, the Town of Rochester Town Board appoints Kathy Frankel to fill a vacancy as alternate member to the Board of Ethics for a term ending December 31, 2026. Requests the town clerk advise of the oath of office requirement. Have that motion?
Make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Okay, next, we need to find a time for our Conservation Advisory Committee interviews. We have a fairly lengthy list. Do you remember how many? It's about 6, 7?
I think, I know, I received 4 applicants. I don't know if you've received any.
I haven't received any additional, but I thought there were more. I thought there were a couple more that you said were. Actually, I did get 2 additional.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I knew there were 2 that said, and then I think there could be, I did hear from one person who said they had to not apply because of a change in circumstances.
We could, obviously, I would personally prefer that Aaron was at the meeting when we were gonna do this, so I don't want to do this next Thursday. Do we want to do it at our audit meeting of the 20?
That's the 29th.
That is the 29th. Wow. How often do you get to have a meeting on February 29th? And I know Erin's sister is born on
Yeah.
February 29th. I learned that
That-
yesterday.
Well, that was that was the one board meeting that I missed.
Yep.
In my whole time was I was out of town for her birthday 4 years ago.
Does that mean that all of the women who are town board members can ask a date?
There you go, I can say.
Now, there you go. Yeah. Anyway, do we want, are you back for that meeting?
I am.
Do we want to schedule them that night? Being that it's
Do we have anything else on the agenda?
not at the moment, and I'm not planning on putting anything else on it.
As long
Yes.
as there's nothing else on. the
Yep, so
agenda
we'll do
for
the-
that night.
We'll do the interviews first and then the bills after? Okay, so we will do it in February. Do we want to do them in 15-minute increments? I think less is too short.
I think 15 minutes, but I think if we're done before that, unless people have questions, if someone's here, we should just keep it going.
Yeah, 15 is fine.
Oh, yeah, no, the audit meeting, I mean, it's a regular scheduled meeting, so as soon as we're done with interviews, we just don't. do
Oh, no,
that.
I'm saying 15 minutes is fine, but if we end at 10 minutes and no one has questions,
Oh,
we can just go on to the next person. is what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah, I mean, do we want to do them? And then the second question, we want to do them in executive session as we normally do? Or do we want to do them in open meeting?
Yeah, I think we should just stick with what we.
We normally,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so we will schedule them, and then do we still want to start at 6:30? Do we want to start at 6 instead?
I think leave it at 6:30, so
Okay.
it's consistent for
Yeah.
all of us.
I'm
You got
actually gonna be in Middletown, so.
Okay.
6:30.
Okay, Michael, I'm gonna turn it over to you for.
What?
Charter. Spectrum.
So,
Yeah, so think you all saw that
mhm.
they came back with another proposal.
I did.
So they've come back down in price. I feel like there's a little bit of shuffling of deck chairs going on, but I think it's reasonable offer. I looked at it. It's making me sad because I had to go back to, it was November of 2022 was the last time we had a contract that we redlined. So they didn't include a lot of the red lines that we had included then. Mary Lou, I know you had specific things. I don't know if you want to go through your questions, comments that you
Yeah,
sent.
if anybody has any concerns, I sent it out to everyone.
Yeah, do you want to just talk through it, Mary Lou? Because I know you sent it out at the last minute and
Yeah,
everybody.
my first question, I just want to be sure, is all of the money that's being used from the town, all ARPA money?
We haven't,
My question related to that was, do you see something in their contract that indicates that it has to be?
Well, yeah, it says that it's a grants contract and we're saying that all the money is coming from a certain definition under federal law. And it says that we're gonna follow that it's gonna be following the ARPA regulations.
right. And
So-
so my question on that is, we have $105,000 that has been set aside in the capital projects budget line that was specifically earmarked by a previous town board. They did $35,000 times 3 years, specifically for broadband expansion. Personally, and I'm speaking from myself, not on behalf of the rest of the board, I would prefer to spend that because it is specifically earmarked for broadband and expansion, and it has to be used for broadband because it was earmarked for that.
Right, so
The balance, but the balance could be ARPA, but I also question, quite frankly, why they care where the source is. And they've yet to answer that question. I don't know if there's some benefit to them if it's ARPA money or not. I don't know why they specifically keep bringing ARPA into the discussion, other than it's one of the options of what ARPA money can be used for. I don't know what, I don't really know why they care where the money source is.
I think I understand from reading their line about funding in here, they're saying that they don't want any risk for if the government were to say if we use ARPA funding, and then the government were to say we misappropriated that and we weren't allowed to use it.
Yeah,
for
so,
this, they're protecting themselves is what I'm reading it as.
yeah, and
Where
Mary
is
Lou,
that, Charles? What
It's
section?
on, it's on the first page,
It's section
number
10.
3, funding.
First page. They say
Am I
it
looking at
twice.
the wrong one?
No, you're right.
Right? Also, wasn't it?
well,
one
that's appropriate use of state federal funding, but the ARPA
Right.
section is 10.
Right, but the 105, is that from the franchise fees, Mike?
Yes, the 105 was.
Right, so
the
that is not
105 was
sta-
designated by the former town board, by
Right.
the town board,
Right,
specifically
so-
for, yes.
So that portion is not ARPA funding, so paragraph 3 and also paragraph 10 would have to be changed. They're really looking at this as it's all grant money being used.
Right.
So they
And
may
that-
have a different form of contract, because I know other towns have used franchise fees for this. If we're gonna use some ARPA and some franchise,
Right.
it's got to be worded differently.
And I understand that, but my question goes back to, and they have yet to answer it. Michael has asked them specifically, why do they care how we fund it? If we're willing to give them $109,000 and whatever it is,
And maybe they don't. Maybe they made an
they
assumption.
seem
I
to
don't
really
know.
care.
Okay, well, you
Yeah.
know what? I may know why they care, and if you'd like to speak in an attorney's session, if we
Okay,
could go take a recess and go into an attorney's
understood.
session,
Understood.
I can tell you what my guess is.
Mary Lou, can I ask though, so the section 10,
Yes.
so there's 2 sentences. The first one is about a fixed award amount agreement as defined, and then they give the section code. Is
Right.
that section of code specific to ARPA, or is that specific?
No, it's not specific to ARPA.
Michael, which section 10 are you talking about?
It's 10. It starts with
The
compliance.
part in the blue,
Oh,
in the
it's
blue.
11 in this update.
Sorry, mine got renumbered. It's like,
Oh, I'm sorry, it goes 10, 11, 11. They have 11 twice.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the
Section
top
11.
of,
Okay.
so
all
they
right,
have
so
2 11s they have to renumber.
So that's
So-
about fixed award, that section. Then the next sentence says the party shall comply with all applicable guidance issued by U.S. Department of Treasury associated with the ARPA grants.
Yes.
Sure, we're doing that anytime we do ARPA money. So to Charlotte's point, I think it's cover their butts, like that we're not doing anything with ARPA monies. But I don't think this is requiring us the way it's worded.
No,
to use
I think they're looking at it as we are using ARPA monies completely and we're going to comply with all ARPA regulations.
But this is not mandating that.
Well,
I agree with you, but I'm reading the text of the.
yeah, I think when you read that in conjunction with number 3 funding, which says it's appropriate use of state or federal funding as may be applicable. If we're the grant, the vast majority is neither state nor federal funding.
We could say, can we just add local?
It's not local grant money.
It's not grant
Oh, it
money.
says grant money.
It's not
Yeah.
grant money.
Yeah,
It was
I think they wrote this
the
contract.
franchise fee that the former town board set aside. And, my point is,
But it doesn't say grant money.
No, the number 3 does not. The other one that is 11, the first 11 does. Say
11 says grantor and
Number
grantee.
3 does not.
Well, grantor and grantee are defined.
Oh, actually, yeah, I'm sorry.
us and-
As
Yeah,
of-
that's just us and them.
Yeah,
You're right.
okay, let's see.
So it's not saying grant money.
Yeah.
I don't see it. We're using some ARPA money. I don't.
So I
Well,
don't-
you know what? I want it to be very clear
Let's
that-
let Mary Lou-
that some is franchise fees and some is ARPA money.
Mary Lou,
I
should
think-
we put you in contact with them and just let you talk to their attorney and resolve it? 'Cause
You know what? I think that's a great
legalese
idea.
thing.
I think that's a
If
great
we
idea.
can clarify
And then
it.
I can find out for sure what their
Yeah.
concern is,
Because
rather than supposition.
my feeling is the 105 is earmarked for broadband. It has to be used for broadband. To change it to some other function is very difficult. This is exactly what that money was set aside for. The ARPA money we can use for many other functions. We can only use the broadband Cablevision money for broadband and Cablevision. And that's why I would rather take that pool of money that was been set
Sure,
aside
because then you can use
10
the
years,
ARPA for
12
something
years.
else.
And then we can use the ARPA for something else. So that's why I don't want to,
Yeah, that's
because we can't use the broadband money for something else unless we go to a whole, we'd have to go to a referendum vote and decide what we're going to use it for. And then the taxpayers would have to say, yes, you can use it for that new purpose. And it's very complicated.
So,
So,
Michael Coleman, should
Yes.
I get in touch with Alexander Hamarda and ask him who their attorney is to discuss? Is that your contact? That's who this
Yeah.
email had come from. Okay.
I'll put you in touch with, so Mary Lou, there's a few other things that were in the original red lines. So some of them I think you can just look at, but some of them I want to get the board's take on.
Okay.
So one was the project duration, which is section 4, I think. So we had added language, and I can send this to the board as well, just in case people feel like any of it's weird.
It's way, way back in our emails, Michael.
Yeah, it's like November 22nd. But essentially, we said each of the project areas, because there's 3, is considered separate, and so they don't need to wait to get approvals for all 3 before they start work on one. They'll start, if they get approvals for St. Joe's, they can start St. Joe's. I don't want that to be a reason for delay of a project that's approved.
right. Because, yeah, it could be read that they're not going to move until they get every
All
single
approvals.
poll for all 3 sections approved, and then they have 1 year.
Yep.
And Michael's point is very valid. They're 3 separate sections. Absolutely agree with that one.
Then we had an
Just for Emily's perspective, Charter Spectrum poles are owned by either Verizon or Central Hudson, or it may even be a private landowner. So they have to go to every utility pole that they will touch and negotiate an agreement to touch that pole with their wires. So that's what that section is dealing with. They have to, so they're giving themselves time to make all those agreements. And it's not an easy process for them.
But do we all agree? Because I think that the concern I have is the more red that's on the paper, the more it may draw out the process. So, but I think that's an important one. Right?
I agree. I agree. And the 3 locations are very. We spent 2 years, literally, Michael and I drove every mile of every road of Rochester, following the lines and identifying where. And we came up with these 3 areas are the main pockets. There are individual homes here and there, but these are the 3 main pockets where there's no service. And we've been negotiating for quite some time, and Michael has taken the brunt of it. Actually, it's been more than 2 years. It's been about 8 years we've been doing this, but anyway.
Some of the other stuff, Mary Lou, was just like adding, where there was language about the report that they provide that would include the status of their poll permits, any issues they considered excusable delays. I think that's fine. I also think if we don't put it in there, it could be fine. So I guess when you talk with their attorney, if they're like, if it sounds like it's gonna just restart the process, we can probably throw most of it out. And then your other stuff was just the jurisdictional stuff of New York versus Missouri,
Yep.
which don't think carried over in their version. So I'll send you this. I basically took the new version they sent, took our red lines and put them together in a new document. So I'll send that out to you. And
Okay. And if with that, Michael, you can just give me a list of the things that aren't deal breakers.
okay.
So if I get that sense that from them, it would be, I can back off.
Okay. So we agree that the only thing that there would be a deal breaker is we want the 3.
We want the 3 sections to be independent.
Okay.
I would agree on that. Does the rest of the board agree with that? 3 sections should be independent. Mary Lou, any of the other concerns you have, are they worth addressing with the board, or they just legal?
No, they're little things that I can just discuss with
You can address it with
with their attorneys. Yep.
I just wanted on the page 6, just this like subject to change. That the cost estimates are preliminary in nature and subject to revision based on archaeological findings or other factors. So I'm just, are we okay with that? It kind of just sounds like they're like, we can kind of do whatever we want.
Yeah,
That was in the original.
what do you think about that, Mary Lou, at the very end there? I mean, if they have to change the route, then I would think we would have to negotiate a new contract, but
Right. I mean, I understand
But
it from
not
their
limited to.
perspective.
yeah,
Is everything.
yeah, I mean, that is very vague.
All right, I'm just gonna put a note here that we want more specific language and not your basic, et cetera. Right?
Well, they say changes to the scope of work mutually agreed upon by the parties,
Right,
or
so I guess the other
necessitated
thing,
by circumstances causing excusable delay. So I think it is saying that if they want to make a change, we both have to agree before they can make the change.
I'm just worried if we've expended money already.
Yeah,
It says including, but it just feels not.
oh, but not
super-
limited to.
Yeah, it's like not super legally tight
Yeah.
for.
yeah, that's what I meant by
Just,
the,
yeah,
et cetera was the not limited to.
yeah, it does get a little vague.
All right, I'll talk to them about how we can
It
get
was?
this.
Okay. So if you,
Okay.
I'll let you and Michael communicate to get the connection, and if you can, make it and then report back to us when you have, some consensus, and we'll go from there.
Very good.
We are so much closer than we were. Thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
they even have your, they even have your payment checks going to sundry billing, grants. So they really think this is all grant money.
Well, and if you want to tell us later in an attorney's meeting why you think that is the case,
Well,
I just
let
question.
let me talk to them first and find out why
Okay.
that's the case.
Okay,
Because I'm just gonna give you supposition.
yeah,
So
agreed.
if I'm gonna talk to them anyway, I'll get the reasoning.
Yeah,
Okay.
Talk to the lawyer too, because I got very squishy answers about that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask them to give me their lawyer's information and so I can speak directly to the attorney.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
I'll-
Mary Lou.
I will try to have something for you next week, but I think we all know
I
how
doubt it'll be next week. I think it'll be March.
communications go through.
Yeah, it'll be
with them.
March. That's
And
okay.
also, while we're on charter, Mike, you did send us the franchise agreement, and as I suspected, that is expired.
It did expire already.
Yes,
Well,
which
the
is,
question is though, does it go from 10 years from the date it was signed by the board or from the date that PSC approved it? Because
it
it was
goes-
30 years later.
it goes by PSC approval, but it looks like our original was 2012, and then there was another resolution in 2013, which
Okay.
makes me think that's when we got PSA approval.
I can tell you exactly when we got it tomorrow because
Great.
I have it in the files.
Great, so we can talk to them about
Yeah.
discussing the next contract. They, typically to get them moving on these franchise agreements, they end up coming a couple of years after, even if you
Yeah.
start 2 years
They did
before.
send an email, it was either last year or late in 2022, where they asked that we delay discussions of the renewal of the contract until such time as this other discussions were resolved. So I don't know. I go back and find that email.
Okay,
I remember it came and Michael and I briefly talked about it when it came.
25 at least. There was something that was
Yeah.
signed until 25.
Yeah, I think it's 25, not 23, Mary Lou, but I'll double.
oh, okay,
I think the
all right.
PSC didn't approve it for quite some time.
Yeah,
So-
because
Alright.
otherwise I would have said we should
Yeah.
use that.
Okay, the phone system upgrade, obviously, we've already addressed that. I'm gonna wait for Aaron to come back. The subdivision code, just wanted to fill you in. I continue to make the updates. I haven't finished it yet. I hope to do that this weekend. And I will get you a new draft, but there's also no rush on it because even if we adopted it and went through the process, it's not gonna take effect until the zoning code takes effect, but it just, my goal was to get subdivision kind of behind us a little bit. So, and then, I'm just gonna wait for Erin to come back because this resolution was her resolution, so. Oh, well, while we are waiting, we can add the fish discussion. So Michael, you were the one that had some questions, so. This was the quote that, I received from Fish. It was for 5 iPads. I did lower it to 4 with the subsequent because I have a town-owned computer. There's no reason for me to have an iPad. Although we could go back to 5, get Kate one for the meetings. It may make her
I
life
was just
easier.
gonna say, would you really consider maybe just keeping it?
Oh,
I would
absolutely.
love to have one.
Absolutely.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so, and so you certainly could use it for the meetings and for many other things, so that's what they spec'd. So, did I not give you one, Michael?
I thought I saw it somewhere.
Sandwiched in there. Can I just ask, Mike, I know when you first said they were iPads, I can't remember what you said, is there a reason why we couldn't go with an Android based one instead of?
No, there
Apple?
wasn't. I simply asked them to get me a quote for what they thought. I explained what the desire was. So for Emily, the desire, and we budgeted for this for a number of years, we've never done it, was that we would get devices. When I was on the school board, we got iPads from the school district that all the board members had. The bonus is we can then set up like a Google Drive kind of thing that you guys have access to. All the backup material can be uploaded. We won't have to have tons and tons of paperwork, but I can do like up to the minute of the meeting. You'll have the devices in front of you at the meeting. You don't have to use your own personal computers, which does become a bit of a, any documents that you're storing on your computers that are town documents, they're foilable. So if Kate gets a foil, she may have to go to you and say, produce, data that's on your computer, emails that are in your town email, that kind of thing. So that was the reasoning for going to these devices. I just want to make sure that ultimately the device we get is something that everybody's going to be comfortable with, is going to be able to utilize. I'm an Android user as well. I can go back to them and say, hey, can you change the quote to an Android base? And I'm fine with that. I've used iPads and I can use them. I prefer Android as well.
Yeah, I'm capable of using, and I'm not an Apple person whatsoever, but I'm capable of using one. I just know, like, if we're doing Microsoft 365 to do shared drives, and that tends to be more compatible with Android based. Yep. One of my thought process behind it. Yep. Just because I know Mac is sometimes problematic with trying to do Windows things with it. At least that I know of from the one Mac I have.
And I did order them, but then they didn't do anything with it yet because we had to do this $800 down payment. And that's when I stopped the process and said, let me talk to the board some more. So,
I mean, I'm up to if anyone, no one else has a big qualm with the iPad, I'm fine.
I would prefer an Android myself too.
I know I use Android, you are an Android, so is Aaron, I think Android user.
I don't even say.
Me too, but
whatever. It's terrible.
I have to use like the other stuff for work that I use after work.
Do you think it would be a problem if we asked for a quote for 3?
When we're dealing with budgets, it's certainly, I mean, I admit it, I'm biased, but I much prefer Excel over other.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering if we could maybe do half and half, do 2 apps, so that people, we're not gonna be the only ones on the board ever, so then it's kind of interchangeable if people need to ever, but I don't.
I'll tell you what, let me ask him for a comparable, let me ask him for a quote for Android.
Yeah, it's a lease.
What's that?
I was asking about I went to the bathroom for those.
Yeah.
But
we jumped ahead and we're gonna go back, so.
Okay. I just
It's
couldn't.
what's a lease?
It's a tacit
Cause
agreement. Tablet as a service.
it's $5,000.
But we own the equipment. Oh, no,
No.
that's an annual
We
fee.
don't. I think we could buy the equipment for that price.
This is like a full-on computer. It might be like more like 1,000, but I think we could get something similar to this at that cost point. And, I mean, if Fish maintains it, they maintain it, but the whole lease model just seems.
Okay, so let me go back to them then and just say, we don't want to do a lease model. We want to do we own, and I'll ask to do an alternative for Android based.
Yeah, or get like Windows, like see what like a Lenovo, Dell, like a couple quotes on like small laptops, I think. Because then if you like Excel.
Yeah, because I originally talked to them about Chromebooks, and they said, no, you don't want to use Chromebooks.
No, Chromebooks, I will say, that's what I use, that's my basis at the food pantry is a Chromebook, and for what I do there, it works for what little I need to do with Excel and Google Docs, I can use that for, but this purpose, it's way easier to go. Chrome, you can't put
Yeah, we need a word,
Microsoft on,
we
you
need word.
need something to have.
And I think they will get us whatever we want. I mean,
Yeah,
when I
whatever's
bought
next,
this, I asked them for this particular laptop, and the price was comparable to everything else because it was similar to my personal laptop. You know, it's an Acer. I've been very happy with Acer, so I just asked them to get a price on an Acer, and they did, and that's when we got this one. So
Yeah, if we're okay with like larger sizes, we can get them even cheaper too. Yeah.
okay, so let me go that route then. It was just, I was thinking the tablets were easier to deal with, but if people don't mind small computers, go that route. So
Yeah, I think what I
Okay.
was pointing out was, I think they're charging us this on an annual basis. I think we can save money overall if we purchase.
yeah, and I apologize, and I missed that annual fees, and I was thinking that would be a one-time shot. So I'll go back to them and say, no, we don't want this. We want a one-time.
Yeah, we wanna purchase it and they just maintain it for us.
Yeah.
It's good coffee.
Yeah, I mean, we already have the agreement with them for service. So. Okay, so Aaron, what I said on the subdivision code is I'm gonna continue, we'll move forward. Let's talk real quick, zoning code and zoning map. Aaron, I know you're away. We don't want to do it on the February audit meeting, so do we want to dedicate the March workshop meeting to just us working on zoning? Do we want to pick a different day? Do we want to do a Saturday?
I think if we dedicate the meeting to strictly this and nothing else, I think that is fine. I think that we get too worn out and bogged down when we're going from topic to
I
topic,
agree.
and then we go to this, so if we dedicate that
Okay,
the meeting is gonna be this first, and if there happens to be something that comes up, it comes after this. Then like one item
Our
after, like
workshop.
if there's.
Okay.
To approve.
you got it. And I will do that. There's the code and the map. It's a sizable amount of work, but do we want to attack one or the other first?
I think,
I think,
The map
Okay.
first?
I was gonna say we should do the map.
I think we should also do the map first and only work on them separately at meetings. We shouldn't go between the
Okay.
two. I think that.
So let's do the
focusing on
map
one-
at the workshop meeting, and then we can decide at that meeting for the March audit meeting,
Yeah, we have-
if we want to do the code with the audit, or if we need to do a special meeting for the audit. I mean, I'm sorry, not audit, the code. We don't have a ton of comments on the code.
The zoning code.
The zoning code, yeah.
Either.
We have some, but not much. We have really none on the
Subdivision.
subdivision other
A lot of
than,
comments on the map.
yeah, a lot of okay. So that's our plan. March workshop meeting, which is March 14th.
Oh.
No, 14th. The 7th is the
The first
regular.
one.
So March 14th. We will work on the map. And I will get out to you sometime in the next week. If you have any more properties that anybody talked to you directly about, get me names, SBLs, addresses, whatever. Even if,
Yeah, I have
even
my
if,
list.
yeah,
I'll make sure I type it up.
yeah, email it to me.
I'm sure
I'll
you can-
consolidate all that into one list. I actually had one person come back to me and say, we changed our mind. We don't have any problems with what you want to do. Leave it alone. I was like, okay. So, next, Aaron, we'll now go back to item X, the HR resolution.
Okay, yeah, we touched on this briefly a month ago, and basically, just for context, I would like to, and Charlotte, actually, I want you to share after I do, but I have, with all the liaisonships, I have quite a bit of interaction with staff, And one of my interests in life is working to make, you know, processes and things like that easier for staff. And so I would like to be able to facilitate like a monthly staff meeting where we would be, you know, basically covering topics of both what, you know, there might be ongoing policies that need to be reiterated to, what are some of the workflow issues that staff are having, and perhaps there's ways that we could, as a town board, think of some bigger solutions, like just being in here, looking at space, it's, you know, learning about, oh, we still need to scan documents in, and, you know, there's all these things that we're very unaware of. Just like kind of creating that, I've had some conversation with Mike about it. I don't want to be a boss and I don't want people to report to me. I don't want day-to-day duties. And so the goal is not to like be managing employees, but just creating a little bit more capacity. We don't even have to call it necessarily, it's not necessarily HR, more just like a way of having communications with and between employees, and then also kind of trying to have a more holistic view of that. So that's just where this came from, and just wanting to like kind of, I think that's important. I talked to a lot of staff. They seem to really enjoy hearing about the town board also and what we're doing and reiterating how the budget works and things like that. So I think it could be a really positive thing for morale, and then also just like being able to like understand a little bit better sometimes the things we're doing. And then it might be that like there's a little bit of energy to revise some of our policies that maybe need to be improved so that they're working better for both management and staff. So it's just, that's where it's coming from. I have a bit of experience as an employer and as a manager, and I just want to bring some of that, interest and energy here. So that's where it comes from. This resolution, I'm not like wedded to anything. I just kind of typed it up quickly out of excitement. The main thing is just being able to have like a monthly staff meeting, whether it's a department head meeting or, whether other employees were to come too.
So Charlotte, let me go, and then I talked to Michael Richardson and got his feedback, so I want to relay that. So go ahead, Charlotte.
Sure, so yeah, I really, for the most part, the same hard points as Aaron. I also like to work with really open communication and working groups to find solutions and resolutions to things that aren't working at times, which happens with so many different departments in a municipality at times with communication or inner workings of things. I also have done a lot of work with handbooks and policy writing. So doing an audit of our employee handbook and making sure like all the updates have gone in there that have happened throughout the years, and then doing a full review and audit of it is definitely something that's on my task to bring to you guys, obviously recommendations too, for us to update it for certain things that may not have been in there when it was originally written, and really just being able to have more open working flow, whether it's department heads or if it's all staff or if it's me and Aaron going and stopping department by department and talking department by department, some form to get just an easy, I guess also for myself personally, better understanding our workings and how each of our departments are getting connected to see if we can help with workflow things, because there's a lot of departments that cross paths. Yeah. So yeah, it is again, same, just to reiterate what Aaron said, it's not that I want a day-to-day thing or to be a boss in any way. I just have experience on this side and want to offer the hand to kind of help with our employees, with the board, and all of us be on the same page.
So I sent this to Michael Richardson Michael Richardson is our human resources consultant, has been for the town 25 plus years. The first thing he points out is staff meetings are not human resources. He's like, you're commingling topics. Overall, his opinion is that the supervisor is not by law responsible for human resources. In most communities that are smaller, it falls to the supervisor's office simply because the town's not big enough that there's a human resources department. But you know, he points out that under the law, the supervisor's responsibilities are financial and running the monthly meetings, and that's essentially it. We all know that that isn't true, and you guys adopt that resolution. So to start with, and Aaron, I know you and I had a pretty emotional discussion. I've changed my opinion on a lot after talking to Michael. Quite frankly, Michael's response to me was, if a couple board members want to take on human resources, let them do it. And I don't mean that in a sarcastic way. I mean, he says they'll take it off your plate. And if somebody really wants to do it, let them do it. So he does point out, and we all make the same mistake, and I do often too, we got to be really careful about terminology. We only have 6 department heads, and that's part of what led to this. The department heads are the elected officials, and by determination, we have made the recreation director a department head, and that's simply because the supervisor at the time, me, did not want to deal with scheduling, after school recreation staff, and things like that. So the top of this chart is our department heads, which are the 5 elected officials that are the main officials, and then the recreation director. The other departments, as it were, there is a supervisory employee in the case of the assessor or the code enforcement officer, and soon to be with the constable. But this is as it is as we sit today. We all know that we're working toward that. The dog control officer, they're a department of 1. The grounds manager that we just created is essentially a department of 1. They're utilizing the highway crew, but the reason it's not a function of the highway department, it's a function of the grounds. So that's why it's separated as it is. So that's sort of what this flow chart is. The recreation director is still managed by the town supervisor, but then the recreation director manages the rest of their employees. So he points out that be careful about terminology. And Charlotte, very valid point about the handbook. Actually, you remember in the organization meeting, I did a resolution when Michael was here at that training he and I talked. We have adopted a number of resolutions that are changes in our handbook. He and I are going to work toward doing it. I'm going to send them all to him. He's going to update the handbook to current. We redid the handbook. Were you on the board yet?
I wasn't.
Okay. Was it 19? 18.
It was 18.
So in 18, we redid the handbook with a group. There was 2 employees that were on the committee. It was B, myself, Michael Richardson, and the employees that were on the committee were selected by the employees as to who their representative was. It was a full-time employee and a part-time employee, and that's how, because we want both represented. And so that's how that happened. And that process took 3 or 4 months, 3 months probably, of meetings and going through it all. So absolutely, we need to get the new version corrected so all these amendments are in. As far as policies, anytime anybody on the board wants to introduce a policy, you can do that at any time. So, I mean, I'm just,
Yeah, I know
just
it's not
sort of,
specifically
yeah,
listed in here,
yeah.
but just like as if like that's the.
But I'm just trying to cover some of these topics to just say, I'm not saying, I'm not advocating for or against this. I just want to clarify that a lot of these duties already have mechanisms to happen. So with all that being said, I'm okay if you guys want to organize, department meetings. We have to be careful. We did it for a while. It got really difficult trying to schedule because when you have departments of 1 person or 2 people, And back then, we still had the town hall meeting room. Now they obviously would have to be here. Closing an office during the day for a meeting, I'm just pointing out, gets problematic because then there's nobody serving the public. So
Yeah, well, we can either.
there's got to be a way to do it,
Either we do it building by building.
and I'm open
maybe,
to
and
whatever
separate-
suggestions.
You definitely need to do it with the departments because you learn a lot about what goes
Yeah.
on with departments. So my recommendation is if you have a representative from each office. I know I don't recall people shutting their offices down for this ever. And
No,
I felt
we
like
did
employees
because
were
the
super-
planning, like, when they came over from this building over to there was nobody stood here. It was because Becky was coming
Yeah,
over.
we can figure out some form of schedule, whether it's we get a representative for each department, we can
There-
figure out the logistics
And
of
we
that to
meet
make
over
it
here,
work.
they can get on somebody.
Yeah.
over here.
But that's my point is, you know, if there was only one building in zone code enforcement clerk at the time. It was after Brenda had passed, it was
Yeah.
Becky. And there was nobody in the office, so she was over at I'm just pointing out the logistical issues that have to be, I'm not, like I said, I'm not advocating for or against it, pointing out what the things that have to be thought of is.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of the idea. I'll say that. up front.
Second.
I'm in favor of the idea. It's just, and if you two guys want to run with it, I don't think we need to call it a subcommittee. If you guys want to organize it, we can do an official resolution. I don't know that we have to. It's up to you.
And I
Um,
suggest that you do something similar, Mike, rather than a subcommittee, maybe a resolution similar to the resolution that's done at the organizational meeting, giving you the day-to-day operations, maybe give authority to
Aaron and
yeah,
Charlotte.
to Aaron and
hold-
Charlotte, right?
To hold
To hold staff.
All personnel.
staff meetings. Yeah.
To hold staff meetings and report back to the town board.
Because the other point I sort of forgot to point out that Michael points out is like, everybody under the town clerk, Kate has total authority over those people.
Yep, total.
Same with highway. Jeff has total authority over those people.
Okay.
So that's the point is, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
What are we voting on now?
so the,
Just allow it.
yep, so
Allow-
if you want,
Give us-
I can craft the resolution off the top of my head and we can amend it as we need to. So a resolution, the Town of Rochester Town Board authorizes Councilwoman Anowen and Councilwoman Spisak to schedule or to schedule and hold staff meetings. Facilitate, thank you. I knew we facilitate staff meetings as necessary. I don't want to set a time frame like once a month, because you guys will figure out what the right
Yeah,
thing
should we
is.
also say, and to assist with HR related
Yeah.
matter?
Or we,
Or
Or
which-
personnel related.
Well, but that's where staff meetings and HR are two separate things. I think if we're doing it, it should be two separate resolutions.
Okay, well, then. we
'Cause
can
I don't
do
know-
Separate, but that's what I just want
Yeah.
to make sure so that we can coordinate with Michael Richardson if we need to.
Why can't they be
about-
in one resolution,
Well,
even if
why-
they're two
why
separate
don't we
things?
just do this?
Meetings.
Well, because
Okay.
And then.
I would want a further discussion about what that means, assist in HR, because HR really is, payroll is already a function of the supervisor because it's financial. Insurance, you know, because Michael and I talked about, he said, what HR duties are there? He said, insurance, if there's a problem, we send them to the insurance, to our Marshall and Sterling to resolve. So I'm not really sure it's so vague, assistant HR that,
Well, that's like
Yeah.
for if there's a staff issue.
Yeah, like
that needs
interpersonal
mediation,
things
Like
come up.
me and Aaron would be the ones to go and coordinate with Michael Richardson to deal with that if we wanted us to.
Why
do
don't
that.
we just
that can
start-
already happen.
Or anything.
Why don't we start with hosting the meetings, and then if we feel like there's some sort of issue with us handling something, we'll bring it to the board,
Okay.
or
Yeah,
you.
I'm fine with
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, because it's, they're sort of unknowns, you know, HR, like I said, is very vague, and there's a lot of HR that is paperwork related, that unless you're there during the day, working in the office, it's, you know, I just don't know how it's gonna get done.
Yeah, we can just do this just do the
Okay.
staff meetings for now. And
Yeah.
we can go from there.
And I'll be honest, I'm fine because it takes the load, because it hasn't been for lack of trying, but it's time commitment. It just doesn't exist. And if you guys, and if we involve a third person, then it, you know, I can't come to him now, and that's okay. I'll send Stephanie, believe me, I'll send Stephanie. She can come, I can't.
She can be your representative.
Yeah, exactly.
For the supervisor's office.
Yeah, I mean, if both of you wanted the meeting, then I could, but otherwise I can't, so
Yeah.
that's fine. So authorizing Councilwoman Allen and Smith to facilitate employee staff meetings as determined.
On an as-needed basis.
Yeah,
I'll
make that resolution.
Second.
You can vote on this, it's okay.
We're not.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. So I made the motion, Emily seconded it.
Yeah.
I think we've already discussed it. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Okay. The final thing is, Alyssa and I talked today about the whole records thing. You remember, we looked into a building, came back over $1 million. She talked to me about the shed idea. The problem with the shed is it's hard to climate control a shed. And my feeling is we're gonna end up with the same problem we have with the trailer, in that the records are not gonna be safeguarded from potential element destruction. So, and I know it may not feel it, but I have been working through solutions. I have a meeting next Wednesday with software people that we talked to about so 2 years ago, we got a grant, Emily, to get all the 60 years worth of building department records digitized. We did that. We got a large format scanner. Company that sold us the large format scanner dropped the ball. They were supposed to come set it up and teach, and they never did. So, well, what they did is they bought credits from the manufacturer of the scanner, and the manufacturer was going to come. I contacted the manufacturer, and the manufacturer, without that certificate, wouldn't come unless we paid for them. We had already paid for it. So finally, the company gave us back the money. In the interim, our Toshiba guy, who doesn't have anything to do with that scanner, but does our copier, came and set it up. So it's now set up. I learned today that there are 20 boxes of records that, for whatever reason, when they left and came back, did not get scanned. I didn't know this piece until today, was that we don't know which 20 boxes didn't get scanned. And that is a big key. That's a big difference. Then there's 20 boxes that didn't get scanned. Alyssa and I talked, and I said I would speak to county personnel to find out the possibility of doing a temporary clerk's position for a part-time position. Well, to review all this and figure out what needed to be scanned and not scanned, and get it scanned. Because until you got to know what didn't get done. Once everything is digital format, this software potential, and I know, Michael, you had some questions about the cost. Toshiba came back to us with a different product, a lesser cost. I'm meeting with him next Wednesday. He's going to present us whatever options he has. It also is software that is on the state grant system, so we don't have to go out and get comparable quotes. It is at the state's designated price, which means the state has already vetted it and set the price of it. So with all that said, I reached out to county personnel today, talking about the constables, but I also asked them, we already have on our list availability of part-time clerical help. We have 2 positions. It has to be under 20 hours a week. So what I'm going to propose is that, and I'm talking to Alyssa, she thought more than 20 hours a week would be too much, because she's going to have to sort of not oversee this person, but there'll be some interaction with this person to make them, to assist in the process. But this takes the responsibility of doing the work off of her shoulders because she's got her other job, her regular job to do. So we don't have to stay tonight. I will bring it back next week. But what I was going to do is ask for the ability to put out on Indeed at whatever rate we decide per hour for a part-time temporary clerk for no more than, and we'll decide whether it's 2 months, 3 months, whatever we decide the time frame needs to be, to assist in the digitizing of the records that did not get, and there's also all the records that have happened since then.
How long did it take the Toshiba guy to do all of them?
Well, the Toshiba guy didn't do them. We sent them off to a company that did them, but it was 60 years worth of building department records. It was about a year.
First half was 6 months, second half was close to 6 months.
Yeah.
Was it a third party that didn't scan 20 boxes?
I don't know the answer. I don't know. It's too late to point fingers. It's just, I got told everything didn't get scanned. I don't know if we didn't send it. Because I'll be honest, searching to gather all the records for 60 years that were in multiple places, it's very likely some of them were maps.
How did they know it didn't get scanned?
I don't know.
Because they search for it, like if things have come up that Jeremy's looking for, and they go to find it and they can't.
They do a search
do a
of the
search
software because what we got back was
So
basically
then do they go and find that
They have to
box?
then dig through all of
paperwork.
the
They know which
misorgan-
box.
No, but they
There's-
came back
There's these
misorganized.
misorganized boxes that they kind of have to piece together where the records are located in the boxes and whether they've been scanned or
All
not.
right. So
But their boxes are all,
All of ours get scanned.
no, we didn't do any of those.
You don't have, it
know
was
it's 20
only
boxes?
No, it was only code enforcement.
Wasn't-
The grant was only code enforcement.
The idea of the scanner was to get
that
the
yours
other doc.
Okay, I thought for some reason the full view, that's why I wanted to, okay.
No, the grant was
Basically,
specifically for the code enforcement. And it was simply because prior, all the records were stored and filed under applicant's last name, not owner of property, applicant's last name. So as property was bought and sold, and Brenda, who was there previously, and then Becky will tell you that it was institutional knowledge of knowing, oh, so-and-so owned that property, and they would have to go sometimes to 4 different files to put together the paper trail. We got the grant through the New York State Education Department. We got what we were supposed to get, but somewhere in the translation, either we didn't get them all the records, they missed some boxes. I don't know the answer as to what happened. But ultimately, in order for the digitizing to work, which now probably 90% of our records have been digitized, we have this thing of data, but there's no way to sort of organize it all. That's why we need the software.
Once the software, so Kate can start to scan town records.
Well, the software will help organize that hard drive that has all, what the hard drive is every folder that was in those files, they scanned it and they scanned the cover of the folder. So every item, and now the nice thing is they're now all searchable, whereas before they weren't searchable. So they can put in a word or a name.
So my question is, when we first applied for this grant and the purpose of this, is it strictly for code enforcement documents?
Yes.
Or were we also supposed to do the clerk's
No.
office?
No, so
The grant was for the code enforcement stuff to get digitized,
But we bought the scanner.
With the grant, was supposed to cover all records.
for all
All
records. Right.
Okay, so that.
And we need software in order.
We need
for
the
that.
software in order for, once they're scanned, we need the software to organize them.
Okay, so my next question is, so I guess really what I'm trying to get at is this temporary position to help the code enforcement office
So,
sort and solve and scan what was not scanned.
well, and get them to a point that's, and then once we get a software quote,
Mhm.
I can bring that to you. And then the data that was the result of all this scanning can then be married with the software to be able to utilize it. What will happen then is a couple things. One is the existing records will not need to be physically present like they are. Plus, I also feel like, and Kate can attest to this, there's probably a lot of cleaning of those records that can happen. There's probably duplicates of things. There's probably things in there that we don't need to keep anymore. And all that needs to happen. And what I'm proposing with this person that we did not budget for, it's going to come out of our contingency fund, is that they assist the building department in several steps. One is identifying and scanning everything that didn't get scanned, which will be all the new stuff. And also, and we're much more paper oriented now than we were back 30 years ago. So,
To get down to what I'm trying to ask here is this temporary position, is there, I guess I'm really more directing this at Kate, is there a need for stuff that you need scanned from that scanner that we should try to account for with this temp person that's doing the code enforcement office?
My plan was that the most documents that have to be kept permanently are building department and planning board. So those were my first two priorities. My idea actually was to hopefully have the planning board secretary, because she does get downtime, to start scanning her documents, because as you're scanning them, you're learning the documents. So I think it should be an in-house employee to do this job, because you're going to learn a lot that's going to help you in your job moving forward, by seeing the documents, knowing where they are.
Are you talking about the 20 boxes too?
Yeah.
You're talking
well,
about.
but it's more than just
That's
20
how I'm
bucks.
looking to, like down the road.
Yeah.
Yes, but as far as the 20 boxes, I think that should be an in-house thing, either it becoming Courtney at some point, or even if you can get planning, because I just think they're gonna have to get a real grasp of the information, and you would want it to be something that they're gonna retain, and it's gonna be something within their position. They're gonna stay here. They're gonna know the material. They're gonna know where to locate the material.
So we might not need a temp person.
Well,
I personally think it should be an in-house thing.
okay, so I'm just trying to relay my conversation with Alyssa. She
Not
feels,
change additional hours and help, but I do think that can be done with employees that work here.
okay,
Mostly what I was wondering was just if we should try to account for more hours for another department's things to get scanned.
Yep.
Since we have another
Yep.
scanner is
right.
what
So,
I just wanna make sure.
so the original plan was building department, what Kate just said, building department, then planning and zoning,
And then over to the.
then town
clerk.
courts.
Okay, so then that's the
Yeah.
order
And
we're
then
going.
But we gotta finish the building department, and that's where she feels that she is completely out of space. She feels overwhelmed because she can't find the records, and so this, trying to get, the goal of the whole grant was to get everything digitized, to get it all in one place, accessible on computer. And, basically we're 80 or 90% of the way there, but we've got no way really to utilize it without the software. And then the information that didn't get digitized for whatever reason, getting that identified. And, when I thought we knew the 20 boxes, I would have been in agreement with Kate, but the identifying of where it all is and what,
Well, and it's also.
it's up to you guys.
Here
If you,
for-
but if you're saying additional help, I don't know who the additional help
But,
is.
can I just ask a couple questions?
Yeah.
When is Courtney gonna shift back? Cause she's more in your office now.
Right, this January, she was in my office 3 days. Starting next week, she goes back to every other Wednesday, being in one department or the
Okay.
other. And then, once I get through even April, we can shift more to over here. And with her being my deputy, my plan was to have her, like days she's even in my, like working for me, to have her scanning documents and the records management end of things. But
Kate, do you want to just coordinate with Alyssa then on this? Because she said to me, I need more.
okay,
But that's what she
we
said.
all
to me.
need lots of help.
No, I agree. And that's why I was trying to create this more immediate solution. And I'm
This
not trying to
topic
second guess it.
infuriates me, because I feel like the wind gets taken out of my sails every time as records manager. So I'm sorry if I sound a little irritable, but it's like the same thing over and over again, year after year. And it's frustrating,
Okay.
really
I'm just-
frustrating. Now I see other employees dealing with what I've been dealing with for over 20 years, so I don't know.
Well, so tell me what you want to do. I mean, she,
I want software as soon as possible. We've
Well,
had a
and that's-
scanner for a year and a half sitting there with no software. It's ridiculous.
I don't know that we need software to use the scanner though. The scanner, you can scan any
You
document.
can scan it, but you're not gonna be able to save it to the software
Right.
in order for.
Well,
so-
I have a meeting next Wednesday and hopefully the board, hopefully I'll be coming to you guys Thursday if asked to approve the software. The last software, there were questions on it.
Well,
And not a
we're gonna
single
talk-
person asked me a question on it, so I was really infuriated by it. You have no idea how hard it is to look for foils when you're just going through boxes, because there's no way to actually just search something. And I do think a lot of foils go unanswered because no one knows where to look up the documents, because there's been such a turnover of employees, and like you said, a lot of stuff you had to go on memory of what you've learned over the years working here. And when you have such a turnover and so many new people, they're not grasping that information. So it's tough, it's really tough. And it's just frustrating because it makes it really hard for people to get their job done.
Great.
How many, so the DocuWare initially that we saw included 4 users. How, if it's planning and zoning, code enforcement, your office.
Honestly, if it comes down to it being a user issue, then just make it records management, the user, and I'm in charge of all the records anyway. I mean, if it really came down to that being how many users we need or don't need, just make it one.
Well, let me see what his proposal is next Wednesday. Because, and if you want to join in on the meeting, he just emailed me yesterday and said.
That was gonna be my next question, if you have Kate and
I can't next Wednesday, but it's the same guy, Russ. I sat through the whole software. but
No, he says this is different.
Different software.
I don't know what it
can't do
is.
this.
Okay. Let's you and I talk tomorrow, find a date, and I'll get with them.
Okay.
See, so. I mean, the presentation he made to you and Bethany, because he thought he was showing the code enforcement, and it turns out he showed Bethany, so.
Well, they were busy down there and I couldn't get my Zoom to work, so I sat in on it with Bethany. And she
Okay.
thought it'd be great, so they can learn how to do banners, so that's how she sat in on it,
Okay,
so.
so, and I apologize, that was when I was in the hospital with COVID, so I wasn't around, I didn't know who did what, so. But. Okay, well,
Can I just add one more thing on that note? I know about the sheds, I will be bringing this next week, but they're a temporary solution. I know that records would not be permanently stored there, just to try to make sense of this all, but I can explain that next week and what I email for backup and stuff like that.
next week.
But when, do they remember I said in my liaison report after I did a walkthrough their stuff, I'm
Okay,
gonna send to you
okay.
guys for next week on the agenda for
Okay.
discussion, so.
Okay.
I'll put my reasoning in there, and I do have quotes and stuff for them, so we can talk about that then.
Okay, well,
And I also,
I definitely want to hear Kate's take on records stored in the shed though, because
It's better than how they're stored right now. I mean.
I've partially talked to Kate, I'm gonna talk to Kate more also, cause it kind of includes. It's really a bunch of storage for the most part, issues in the back that I saw, so we can do that next week, cause it's a late meeting, and the only other thing is, I forgot to bring it up before, but I just wanna make sure we revisit, or I just wanna know if we've talked to Michael Richardson about Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve for the employees. We had tabled that from the organizational meeting.
I did not reach out to
Okay,
him.
that's fine. I'm happy to send him an email also so that it gets done if you want me to do that, so that it's something on. the
No,
plate.
just
Okay.
send me an email and I'll
Cool, I just don't wanna forget about it. I know it's ways away, but I
no,
just don't want
but
it.
send me an email and I'll reach out to him and ask him.
The earlier we can advertise. Yeah.
Yeah, that too,
If I
yes, I
had
can
it
get
on
on the schedule for people and on the website for the new websites. That's all I
Understood.
wanted to.
Got it.
Well, thanks for sharing your
Yeah.
frustration, Kate.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry we, haven't.
So
Moving
just to
forward.
clarify though, we want to ask Kate to discuss with Alyssa because
Yeah,
this
I'm
additional
definitely,
person.
yeah, I have no problem with it, but just.
Yeah.
I think, I just wanted to just respond and say, I think if there's a need, you know, however the division of labor is, if there is need for more staffing in that office and there's a way that we could provide relief, I think we should do it. The question of the labor, what the labor is doing versus scanning versus some other assistance, I think we can work that out. But I do hear you, and I'm sorry it was not as, like, that I didn't absorb as readily the urgency around getting that software. And I think it is a priority to get something implemented so that we really need to improve these systems. And this is where it starts, and I'm hoping that we will continue on that momentum. But you're right, it's, you know, the wind out of yourself, we don't want that, and records are like essential to town. So like, you know, I just want to apologize. And, you know, I know you guys will be having that discussion next week. Do not hold anything up because I'm not here. Like, just, I trust everyone on that, so. Yeah.
Yep. A motion to adjourn in memoriam, find that. You have that one?
Yeah, I'll read it. Detective William E. Moylan Jr., Diane McCord, who was a former town of Sopa supervisor.
And town clerk and.
Oh, she was? Thank you.
Town clerk before she's.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Retired as town clerk, then became a town board member, and then fixed.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Did not know that history. Frank Joseph Coddington Sr., Judy K. Garlinghouse, Vaughn Stancage, George Stephen. Kate, can you help me on that last name? Do you know it?
Pension.
Pension, thank you. Dick Davenport, Robert D. Cosgrove, Joseph Blank, and then we've added Paul Roxby and Manfred Kastner. Kastner. And the people of Palestine and Israel, the people of Ukraine, and all suffering from COVID. So a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, Mary Lou.
Bye, Mary.
Mary Lou, before you leave, are you working tomorrow or are you off tomorrow?
Thank you.
I'm working.
Your team chatter.